called Big Beautiful Bill and its massive deficit.
And I'm Juliette Kayyem, in for Marjorie Egan. Then we'll open the phone and text lines. No, it's not still 2014. Another civil war is brewing for the Demoulas family as Market Basket's board put beloved CEO Artie T on administrative leave. Call or text, weigh in on this Greek supermarket tragedy, reflect back on 2014's protest, and share your love and thoughts about Massachusetts' most beloved supermarket chain. It's Succession, but for groceries. It's all ahead on the first hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Lawyers from Harvard University and the Trump administration are in federal court today in Boston. NPR's Alyssa Nadworny reports it's over the administration's attempt to ban the university from enrolling international students.
According to court filings, Harvard's lawyers argue that Trump administration officials have a vendetta against the university, signaling it out and violating its First Amendment rights. It included social media posts from the president as evidence. The Trump administration has argued that Harvard has violated civil rights, including allowing anti-Semitism and race discrimination on campus and in admissions. Therefore, stripping the school of the ability to issue visas to international students is warranted. The university's president, Alan Garber, has acknowledged issues with anti-Semitism, but says the school is working to address it. Alyssa Nadworny, NPR News.
A family in Southern California is facing deportation. They had legally entered the U.S. to obtain medical care for their young daughter. From member station KVPR, Joshua Yeager reports doctors say the child could die within days of leaving the U.S.
4-year-old Sophia, a pseudonym given by the family's attorneys to protect her identity, suffers from short bowel syndrome. The disease requires her to wear an adult-sized backpack that delivers nutrients intravenously, 14 hours a day. Through an interpreter, Sophia's mother, Daisy Vargas, says the life-saving treatment is only available in the U.S.
If we returned back to our country, she would be at the hospital day and night.
Vargas crossed the Mexican border on humanitarian parole, approved under the Biden administration. But attorneys for the family say immigration authorities revoked the parole in April without giving a reason, and that Vargas was informed by the CBP Home app, which they say is a familiar pattern since President Trump's return to office. For NPR News, I'm Joshua Yeager in Bakersfield, California.
A group of young people is suing the Trump administration for prioritizing the use of fossil fuels, saying this drives up planet-warming emissions. Montana Public Radio's Ellis Julin reports from Missoula. The suit was filed today in federal court in Montana.
The plaintiffs are 22 young people from across the country, including 7 of the youth plaintiffs in Montana's climate case. The state Supreme Court ruled in their favor last year. They're now suing over a suite of President Trump's policies, including executive orders to promote fossil fuel projects. Trump says the U.S. needs to boost domestic energy production and limit industry regulations. Eva Lighthizer is the lead plaintiff and one of the 16 that sued the state of Montana.
We as young people are inheriting this future that is very uncertain, and it is quite scary for us. And we are doing the best that we can to protect and preserve a safe future for ourselves.
The plaintiffs are asking the court to block the Trump policies and reinstate climate change monitoring across government sites. For NPR News, I'm Ellis Julin in Missoula.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. President Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security has given Harvard University 30 days to respond to its move to stop the school from enrolling international students. Shortly after being notified about the ban on international students, Harvard claimed that it had unlawfully been deprived of an opportunity to defend itself against that move. Meanwhile, today is Harvard's 374th graduation ceremony. GBH has a reporter over on the campus. Cape and Island State Senator Julian Cyr says he is saddened and alarmed at the way the immigration raids were conducted on Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard this past Tuesday. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, working with the FBI, arrested about 40 people. Cyr says agents pulled over work vans and questioned island residents without clear cause.
This kind of sweeping action has serious consequences. It has left families in fear. It's disrupted businesses of all kinds. And I think it's designed to send a chilling message to many residents who have lived and worked and contributed to island life for years.
ICE says the arrests included one gang member and at least one child sex offender. In sports, it's a travel day for the Red Sox, who are also figuring out who will play what position when they open a series with the Braves in Atlanta tomorrow. In the forecast, cloudy, mid-60s today, cloudy 50s overnight, and then rain arrives again tomorrow late and hangs around for Saturday. Oh, joy. Temperatures in the upper 60s to mid-70s. It'll be the 12th straight wet weekend in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from UKG, delivering HR, pay, time, and culture products and services, dedicated to helping clients build a great workplace for their people. UKG.com/great. UKG, our purpose is people.
You're listening to BPR. I am Jim Browdy. Marjorie Egan is out today, filling in for her as a regular contributor to this show. Harvard Kennedy School's Juliette Kayyem, who's also CNN senior national security analyst and former assistant secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama. Hello, Juliette. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You excited or no?
I'm so excited.
Well,
I'm so
advice,
nervous.
I've been doing this 26 years.
What?
Don't screw it up. That's my advice.
Listen, Jim,
from me to you.
Everything I know from you. So... My screw
You're
up.
not the only person
my
who
screw
said
up
that.
is your screw up. I love that. I love that the first segment is with like a top host as well.
He learned everything from me too.
I know.
by the way.
I need to stand though.
Okay, up first we're thrilled to have you, by the way. Via
Thank
Zoom
you.
is political analyst Chuck Todd. He's the host of the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com at the Chuck Toddcast. Chuck's the former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, soon to be the host of a brand new show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Noosphere, N-O-O Sphere. Chuck, welcome. Good to see you.
Nice to see you guys. Juliette, welcome to the Jim's Jungle here.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. You're the first guest I get. Thank you so much. We're going to muddle through this, but
So she says.
it's great to have you here. I wanted to.
You got to learn how to do multiple jobs if you work at Harvard, because I think you may have to start singing for your supper.
Yeah, we're gonna see if I have any students in my class next semester, given that half of them are international students. But we wanted to start and ask you about this huge tariff decision that came down overnight or late at night, with the U.S. Court of International Trade essentially saying no go on the tariffs. I mean, we'll talk about the legal stuff later, but what does it mean politically for Trump in this era of the tariff wars?
He's going to catch a break. The question is, does he view it that way? Right? Is this you could pull back to 60,000 feet and say, guess what? Our system is working. There are checks and balances in the system. There are various ways that you have the legislative branch, you have the judicial branch, you have these different courts. And, it's interesting. In many ways, the system has prevented Trump from executing on some of his worst instincts, both in the first term, that was the case, and it's now the case early on here in his second term. It's, like I said, he's caught a break. The question is, does he view it that way? He could take this and respond as if it's some sort of personal rebuke and get angry and or does he realize that he needed an exit ramp from this bad strategy anyway, and is this an opportunity for him to take it? But I'll tell you this. You want to talk about sapping any leverage at all that the United States had in any of these negotiations with countries on different tariff levels, they're gone, right? What country has to negotiate with the United States at this moment right now?
Well, I have to say my favorite moment yesterday was not just the court decision, was a reporter, CNBC's Megan Casella at the White House, has an
Taco
exchange
Thursday
with Donald Trump, in which she asks about a Wall Street meme that is gaining traction, the so-called taco trade. Here's the reporter and then Donald Trump.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number, and I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, And they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
That's my favorite part. Don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question. Look at the smile on Chuck Todd's face. What do you think of that little exchange there, my friend?
No, I mean, here's the real question I have. Is that really the first time he's heard that phrase? Like, has his handlers been protecting him from, they protect him from mockery. So sometimes he doesn't know he's being publicly mocked by, Wall Street with this. But the other thing that you can't help but realize is he really is starting to get old.
Yeah.
His voice is really aging. We can sit here and have all this talk about Joe Biden, which was all true. He was aging fast. He's 4 years older, and it felt it. Donald Trump is essentially feels like he's on the same trajectory as Biden was in his one term.
Yeah, that was my sense
just hear
too.
the weakness in the voice.
Yeah, and also
really
trying to do the TACO. I was telling Jim, the only fun part of Taco was imagining that actually Trump didn't know what it was, and we all got to talk about it around him, and we would just say taco, and then he would go, "What's that?" So now he knows, but. The taco thing, though, and the court opinion does lead to sort of a general sense that things that came on very strong 100+ days ago are starting to be reassessed or even end. And I guess that is, I'm talking about Elon Musk, who announced last night that he's finally leaving the federal government. He put it in the guise of, well, this is the end of his special government service, but certainly people know that he has been frustrated and that members of the cabinet have been frustrated with him. I just have a 3-word question for you. What was Doge? I mean, in the end, what was Doge? How should we think about it?
A failed experiment, a good idea poorly executed. I mean, I actually don't think it was a bad idea in theory. This is sort of Donald Trump's political lot in life. He'll say things that people agree with. Then when he tries to execute a strategy to implement, it's a disaster, right? Doge couldn't have been executed more poorly, other than how he executed his tariff policy, right? All of those things. You want to bring industrial manufacturing back to the United States? Why don't you lay out a plan to do it? Why don't you do it in 6 months at a time? You'll do this, and the next 6 months it's here, and the next 6 months it's here. You do sort of do a logical thing with Doge. There was plenty. There were Democrats that would have signed on to this. His inability and this administration's total grievance focus, where they're not even interested in finding to see if they can find bipartisan support, it is making this entire presidency at best a shooting star presidency, meaning it's like there's glimpses of things that they want to do. I mean, just look at this first 200 days. Right now, we could look at it as the incredible shrinking presidency. I'm going to end Ukraine war in day one. Now he can't. It looks like that, Putin is playing him like a fiddle. The tariffs, I alone am going to, reset the agenda. Our system of checks and balances says, nope, you don't have that authority at all. You're losing court fight after court fight after court fight. But hey, he's got a trial date for the Pulitzers, so that has to make him feel good. But this really is a shrinking presidency right now. I mean, he is being exposed to have much less power than he projects, and the world is figuring this out.
Yeah.
So does it matter to senators as they're taking up the so-called big, beautiful bill that even Musk is calling out the massive deficits, that additional deficits this is going to cause? Or is it just one rich guy shouting in the wilderness?
Yeah, I just don't think that Elon Musk strikes fear in the hearts of these guys either, right? They're not crazy about him. Does it give Ron Johnson some but again, find me the Republican that would be willing to tank this bill if their vote would be the difference between it passing and tanking. And I just don't think anybody's going to do that to their party's president. We found Joe Manchin couldn't do it to Joe Biden. I don't think Ron Johnson and Rand Paul, they may end up voting against it because there's room for them to vote against it, right? They only need 51 votes versus the 53 Republican senators. But, I think this bill goes largely unchanged.
You think the
they'll
Senate
tinker
is
here.
really?
I do, because there's just not. Again, I go back to the experience we've seen in the last couple. There's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of talk, but who's willing to face the wrath of? And in some ways, even as Trump is weaker on the world stage today than he was, in some ways that makes members of his own party more vulnerable to his rage, right? He's going to end up, he wants to show he's got power over somebody. And the one thing he has power over are Republicans.
Yeah, but
right? That is one thing he has power over. So I don't think, especially now that the tariffs are yanked off the table, I actually think that it makes it easier for these Republican senators to get on board this bill, which will not be helpful to them in the midterms. Right. I promise you, it will not be a net political positive for them.
One of the powers of Musk, though, was obviously threatening primaries for these guys. Now with him gone, do you think that they could see, well, look, the president is not breaking 50%. He's wildly unpopular amongst independents who they need. Do you see a floor where the international stage is saying this guy's got nothing, that would then translate to the domestic stage, or is it just you're waiting for the midterms?
Boy, I look, in theory, you should be right? In theory, his weakness should make a John Cornyn feel better about his own reelection chances, right? Or a Tom Tiller, right? The anti-Trump Republicans, could that suddenly be a benefit to the voter? I don't know if the problem is that isn't the way the primary voters think, right? And there is it is hard. Trump can turn off the base from supporting you as a generic Republican if you're not careful. So I think it's tough. Like, let's say Cornyn got out of his primary. It's not like he could pivot to being sort of, I'm not a real, pro-Trump guy. If he was said it out loud, it actually could cost him support in the base. So I think this is the trap Republicans are in, right? Swing voters don't like Trump, but base voters don't like when you walk away from Trump. So this is what makes the tightrope such a tight rope.
We're talking to Chuck Todd from the Chuck Toddcast and soon to be Newsphere. So we didn't get to this last week with you. You had Ro Khanna on, who gets a lot of airtime on the Toddcast, and I've rarely seen you nonplussed, actually, in the long time I've been watching you. You appeared to be, when he made a comment about the Democratic leader in the Senate. One, was I right? You were nonplussed, correct? And two, what did he say that threw you off a drop there?
Well, he was pretty tough on Schumer. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, I am. That is what I'm referring to.
Yeah. But it's funny to me. Have you noticed? It's almost easy to pick on Schumer now.
Yeah.
He feels like the Democrat that you, as an elected Democrat, you can get away with attacking. It's very similar to how Republicans started treating McConnell towards the last couple of years of McConnell, where you had free reign because the base of the Republican Party didn't like McConnell, just like the base of the Democratic Party didn't like McConnell. And Schumer is starting to enter that vice, right? That political vice world of where you've somehow, you're a punching bag for the left and the right, and it's an uncomfortable place to be. I hear stories that Schumer is, unlike McConnell, who sort of didn't care that people were doing this to him, Schumer cares.
Yeah. I mean,
Schumer's a little thinner skinned than McConnell on this stuff.
One of the interesting things, I mean, New York, Schumer has to run for office, even though
I doubt he runs again.
Yeah,
Juliet. I really do.
Well, I think he's got to be. I was surprised.
That he'll run again. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I doubt it. Okay. It's 28 that he's up next, and he'll be in his I think he'll be 80, right? Yeah. 80, pretty close.
Yeah, and one sign of where New York City, at least, is heading. I have kids who are in college age, and they said, watch this guy. A lot of people who may not know him, Zohran Mamdani, out
Who
of
is
nowhere.
Zohran Mamdani?
He's running for mayor.
He's going to be right now he's in second place.
Behind Andrew Cuomo?
And behind Andrew Cuomo. New polling came out yesterday. My kids had said, watch this guy. He's all over their platforms, and the platforms I'm not on, and showing that the old guard Democrats in New York may be in trouble, that if he's this close to Cuomo, and Schumer's got to be looking at that too.
Well, it was interesting. There was a poll that it was just New York City Democrats. but that showed AOC almost up 2-1 on Schumer among New York City Democrats. And for what it's worth, in the governor's race, it had Richie Torres and Kathy Hochul neck and neck. Now, I will say this: both Schumer and Hochul, AOC is not going to be very popular in Western New York and in Central New York. So, a primary isn't a shoo-in for her. You can't just win a primary in New York City, but you do sort of see that. Believe it or not, we're like 4 weeks away from the Democratic primary in New York City mayor, and a guy who is not at all apologized for his behavior, taken any responsibility for his actions, is about to become the Democratic nominee for mayor.
Yeah.
It's you want to talk about a tired-looking party. You need a new mayor of New York City, and you have to turn to Andrew Cuomo?
Yeah.
Right? It's the symbol of tired and a party that is just leaderless right now, that Andrew Cuomo can come in, who is, it's like a beat up old jalopy that you've, I'd rather drive that car than any of this stuff. You're like, wow, what is wrong?
Right. And the fact
with the party right now?
and the fact that it's Eric Adams he's replacing, also not a great image for the Democratic Party. That Mr. Adams, Mayor Adams.
Remember when he was
really
going to be the
shocking.
savior of the party?
Oh my God!
When he got elected, he said, "I'm the face of the new Democratic Party." Guy's not even a Democrat anymore.
Yeah.
No, it's really, and the point you make is really important. I mean, the fact that New York City may be turning to a guy who's been, sexual abuse and that sort of stuff, because the Republicans would never do that. So it's pretty obvious that it's only a Democrat.
I was just going to say, this is a reminder, by the way, when people say the impact of Trump, we're never going back. He has lowered the bar. Yeah. So profiting off of politics now is going to be an acceptable way to do business. This is every time we've moved the line in politics, right, on character, it never goes the other way. Well, we never restore anything. We just have a new floor of tolerance. And Donald Trump has just accelerated us down that escalator.
Well, I'm going to take both sides of that issue, and I hate when anybody does this, but it's real. On one hand, I say Cuomo couldn't be where he is, considering his sexual abuse history, if it wasn't for Donald Trump leading the way. On the flip side, I say... We're going to talk about this later. We might as well bring. You're the first person to use the term kleptocracy around Trump on our show several months ago. And we talked yesterday, and we're going to talk more today. Is there any I'm closing my eyes. Is there a future president who you can see who could pardon somebody 3 weeks after his mother bought $1 million ticket to a dinner other than Donald Trump? Does something like that ethic survive Donald Trump? I don't think so.
I hope you're right. But see, this is the slippery slope of things. So, for instance, I'm old enough to remember all the outrage when Bill Clinton basically sold a pardon to Mark Rich.
Mark Rich, right? We talked about,
Pretty clear that he sold a pardon to Mark Rich. And there was all this outrage. And, George W. Bush was very careful with how he handled pardons, and same with Obama. They were not going to look like Mark Rich, and they put in real processes. And the two of them, the most controversial pardon Bush made was the commutation of Scooter Libby, and he commuted the sentence, wouldn't give him a full pardon. That was his way of saying, sorry, Dick, not giving you everything you want here on this. But the point is that, so in the short term, I would argue, yes, it made us, the next two presidents, clean up their act. And yet, Stephen Miller, essentially, right, the architect of all of this nonsense, justifies all of these actions by saying, well, they did it first.
Yeah.
And you sit there and say, okay, this is the two wrongs don't make a right presidency. He always finds a way to say, but they did it once here, so we're going to do it 1,000 times over here, right? Yeah. Like, it is clear pardons are for sale.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. And everybody's like, oh, well, did you catch Mike Johnson? I'm just sort of like, still can't believe this.
On what?
Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is asked about the Trump kids profiting off of crypto and these fundraisers, and why Speaker Johnson, when he was wanted to do all these investigating of Hunter Biden, and he says, well, the Biden crime family did it behind closed doors. Right. Trump does everything out in the open.
Right.
And I'm like.
The transparency corruption makes it much better. The corruption that's transparent.
What this means, Juliet? You can now walk in to Saks, walk out, and wave at the camera. As long as you let the camera, I'm shoplifting. Hello. Just so you know, I'm doing it out in the open. I'm not hiding anything. I'm a shoplifter. Donald Trump and Speaker Johnson said it's okay if I do it out in the open.
Yeah, the magnitude of it, I just is so overwhelming. Not just the amount of money that the Trump kids are making as compared to, say, the allegations against the Biden children, but also who is being pardoned. I mean, it's like it's not just like tax evasion. It's like tax evasion from a nursing home, like tax evasion from first responders. I mean, stealing money from first responders.
Who's paying it?
I know.
We're paying it. What?
How about the mob boss in Chicago?
I don't even understand some of these. I mean, it is, and obviously this is after the January 6th pardons, and now he's suggesting that these guys who were pretty serious about killing Governor Whitmer in Michigan, that they may be next on the list. Yeah, why not?
Hey, can we before I don't want to talk about pardons. Can we go back for a second? But
I do hope that this is something that we got to actually probably. It will take a constitutional amendment, but the pardon power has to be taken away from the president.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a constitutional amendment pretty soon on that. So, can we? So many of these people personally off camera. Does a Mike Johnson? This may be so naive that I'm going to be embarrassed. Does Mike Johnson go home at the end of the night and turn to his wife and say, "You won't believe what I had to do for Trump today. I am so mortified. I almost can't come out of the house tomorrow." Do these guys?
Mike Johnson is a little bit different. Like he is a true believer, and he's meaning and it's not a true believer in Trump, but he's a true believer in his sort of conservative crusade that that you gotta, that this is and I think he really is a believer in the culture war, not necessarily some of this other stuff. So and he also, I think he believes that how government runs now is how you have to run it. Like he's not a very experienced legislator. He's only been in Congress, not even 10 years, I think. Yeah. And it tells me that he's not ever been there when bipartisanship actually was the coin of the realm, right? Yeah. Like that was a fairly frequent thing. You really didn't get much done if you didn't have at least a fig leaf of bipartisanship. And he didn't grow up in that era at all. Like he is truly in the partisan era of governance. So I think I think more in a weird way, I think Steve Scalise is probably the one that might go home and leave what I'm doing.
As long as there's somebody.
Only because I do think there's somebody. Because he's at least been there when the place was a bit more functional.
Before you go, if you had to rank, I mean, you've won a lot of awards and obviously a lot of acclaim through the years. If you had to rank where great moments in your career stood, where would you put being a judge at the 16th annual Taste of Delray, Chuck Todd? Where would that be on the pantheon?
The fact that made it on your radar is very exciting.
Well,
to me.
What is it? Tell people.
We want to actually know if you're open for some under the table cash from one of these restaurants and talking about corruption.
So Delray is this wonderful community that basically is the bridge between Arlington and Alexandria. If you really want to know the geographic location of this area, a longtime friend of mine is just always been like sort of the unofficial mayor of Delray, and she's asked me to be, and it's I get to be a food judge. It's the 14 restaurants of Delray, and I literally I've never gotten to be a food judge before. I mean, I have to tell you, I'm fired up for it. And judging starts right at lunchtime. I mean, it's perfect timing. Sunday at noon.
How many hours are you eating for?
Just the awards are 2:45, and it starts at noon.
That's a long lunch.
I'm going to eat all the way till about 2:30.
So,
it's really sad.
To all the restaurateurs, he's open.
It's sad that Marjorie's off today because Marjorie, many years ago when she worked at the Herald, I believe was a judge in a sausage eating contest in the North End. So she could have really helped you out.
You're really trying to play the YouTube algorithms, aren't you? So I don't,
you know what? We're proud of you, though, Chuck. We're very proud of this moment for you.
Appreciate it. But let's not bring up sausages. Jim, you're just going to get in trouble.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Hey, Chuck, it's great to see you.
Thanks a lot. We've been speaking.
All
right. Remember, smile to the camera when you're shoplifting.
You'll be
okay.
Thank you. We'll do that. See you soon, Chuck Todd.
Yep.
We've been speaking with political analyst Chuck Todd. He's the host of the Chuck Toddcast, former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, and soon to be host of a brand new show, Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the Newsfare platform starting in June. Thank you, Chuck. Coming up after a quick break, the Market Basket family drama is back. And not a moment too soon. We'll open the phone and text lines for your reactions after a quick break. You are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Vincent Valdez. He's an artist who illuminates forgotten histories. Now he's in the spotlight with his first national touring exhibition currently on view at Mass MoCA. Plus, the musical duo behind the hit musical Two Strangers, now at the ART. It has something to say about finding love the old-fashioned way, as in not on an app. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Bunker Hill Community College, offering 6-week summer mini-sessions to achieve college and skills goals. Sessions start June 1st and July 14th. Registration at bhcc.edu/summer. And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, employing athletes since 1980 and currently hiring to join their team. Gentle Giant is an equal opportunity employer. More at gentlegiant.com/careers.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Juliet Kayyem sitting in for Marjorie. And some of the text, Lisa watching on YouTube says, good luck, Juliet, getting a word in with Jim. Anonymous texter, capital letters, yay, Juliet. Keith Lockhart will be so jealous. Keith said the other day he wanted to co-host the show.
How about
really excited?
How about Keith and Juliet? That would be.
I don't think so.
No, it's not going to happen because
fine.
I don't know I don't know what intros are.
Exactly. I'm the intro guy. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. By the way, Shirley DeYoung and Andrea Cabral will be hosting for Marjorie and me tomorrow at the Boston Public Library. So it was a simpler time, 2014, when the last Succession-esque feud roiled the beloved Tewksbury-based grocery chain Market Basket. Here's a little sound to take us all back.
Customers continue to honk their horns, and as you take a look inside the store, a lot of barren registers. The store only having 2 registers open today. This is Saturday. This is a prime grocery shopping day.
Family values that RDT has instilled on everybody. It's just, that's what's wrong with corporate America. They don't see that.
I mean, I love RDT. I would stand by RDT and be out here every day until he is here.
I'm here to support him. I'm not shopping here until something's done. I would rather stand out here and do something right than to sit inside and cower.
That gives me chills. It was so fabulous. Employees rallied outside the headquarters. Warehouse workers refused to stock shelves. Customers, this was so great. Customers taped their grocery receipts from other stores to the windows of their local Market Basket to show their support for employees and the CEO. Now, 11 years later, CEO, the good Arthur, as he's called, the bad Arthur, so to speak, was Arthur S. Demoulas. The good Arthur, who survived and has prospered, Arthur T. Demoulas, is once again fighting for his spot at the helm of the company. He's been placed on paid leave by Market Basket's executive committee, allegedly guided by Arthur T.'s 3 sisters, by the way, who say they're investigating the possibility he had plans to lead an employee work stoppage. There's a lot we don't know. What we do know, everybody and their mother loves the Market Basket and the good Arthur. And because we can take constructive criticism on the show, we heard your complaints and decided to give you a small break from talking about Donald Trump for 20 minutes. So give us a call, 877-301-8970, or text this. Will you consider another Market Basket boycott if Arthur T. Demoulas isn't allowed back on the job? And of course, tell us the importance of Market Basket in your life. Our number is 877-301-8970. 8970. I don't know how much you remember this thing. I had a lot of these people on the show, particularly on television. Marjorie and I had some on the radio. This was the most unbelievable uprising. Yeah. Employees, supervisors, in support of the boss they preferred. It was unbelievable, and it's about to happen again, it appears.
Right. And this was where I decided that the Market Basket family should start to be more creative with its names, because Arthur S. and Arthur T.
It's hard.
It is hard to remember. So Arthur S. is the bad one. Arthur T. is the present CEO. I remember, and also, I mean, I go to Market Basket. There's one near me in Somerville. if you can survive that
I live
parking,
like 2 blocks from
I know
you.
if
There's
you
one
can
near me, too,
survive
yeah.
that parking lot is kind of terrifying.
It's unbelievable.
It's
By the way, you
unbelievable.
can go in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and there's not one spot in the lot.
I think people are parking there for the tea. I do. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Forget Market Basket. We're talking about the parking lot. So I have a little hack. There are parking spaces behind the Market Basket.
To the right there.
To the right, you know it as well, and you'll be able to find a space. But I am a shopper, not frequent, because I don't have a house, as many kids in the house as I used to. But it is a family saga that we can't get enough of in this city. But I think people from around the country sort of love it because it's just, here's a brother, 3 sisters on the board. He wants his kids to be the next CEOs, and it's a family that can't get out of its own way.
By the way, the dispute, if you weren't either around or forgot, on one hand was a cousin, Demoulas, who wanted to take profits out of the company. And Arthur T., who survived, who got all this support, was saying, we have to invest in the employees' pensions, and we've got to lower, and other benefits, and we've got to keep low prices, which is one of the... By the way, if you go... I go to the Somerville, as many of you listeners know, nonstop. Not only the price is great, the workers are so friendly and so nice. And I remember during the first spat a decade ago, I would ask workers what they thought of Arthur T. This is the boss of a very big company. It's even twice as big now. It's one of the largest chains in the country. People knew him. Yeah. They had met him. They said he would come up to me at the store, ask me about my family, my kids. Here's a little taste, by the way. As I said, I interviewed a lot of these people 10 years ago. Here's a clip of this supervisor from Market Basket. His name was Tom Trainer. I remember him. He was on Greater Boston, my television show, with me in 2015, a year after the protest. He was fired during the protests last year, and then he was rehired when RDT returned to power. Here's a little bit of Tom Trainer.
You know, to duplicate what happened with Market Basket would be difficult at best, because you're talking about decades of culture built up. You know, the Demoulas family, Arthur T. and certainly his father before him, T.A., you know, built this company based on taking care of the people. Take care of the people, and the people will take care of the business. And that was never more evident than it was last summer.
How beautiful is that comment from somebody about their boss?
And
it's
by
really
all
great.
accounts, just by corporate standards, RDT, the good Artie, has been a pretty successful CEO. They were in massive debt. He apparently, I mean, at least by public records, they got him out of debt. There's been no allegations of fraud or bad behavior on his part. All we can tell from the public record is that the board has put him on this administrative paid leave because he didn't want their oversight. That seems very favorable to the board, and that is their press release. So we'll probably learn more about RDT's concerns about what was going on with the board, which is his sisters.
Right, his sisters
It's
were
crazy.
with him against his cousin 10 years ago. Now they're against him. Before we take a call, it's a great note from our colleagues. Karen Marshall is one of our great colleagues from the morning edition, was watching NBC 10 this morning. They had a split screen, which means 2 different pictures, one of Karen Reed, the trial, and one of Market Basket, Arthur T. And she comments, quote, I love living in Massachusetts.
Only in Massachusetts could the Karen Reed trial and
RDT.
Market Basket sort of share
Karen.
a screen.
We love you, Karen, for that. Let's go to Kim in Norton. You're first on Boston Public Radio with me, Jim Browdy, and Juliette Kayyem. Hi, Kim.
Hi, good morning. I'm a long-time everything and sustainer.
Thanks.
I am thrilled that you're doing this. I actually have already called corporate this morning.
Great.
And they're very happy to take our calls and our comments. And I have been obsessed with this story. Food Fight, the documentary about it, is streaming on YouTube right now. And I was looking at it because I need a little hints about resistance right now for some reason. And it's such an excellent story. I can't believe they think our memory is this short. I drive 25 minutes out of my way for Market Basket, and I will take my receipts to the window if they continue.
You are fabulous. And you know what's great about that call? I hadn't even thought of this. I don't know if you had, Juliette. It's as Kim just said, it's a perfect example about unlikely resistance in an unwinnable fight, which was won, which maybe gives us a little guidance about resistance in a bigger fight than just Market Basket. Kim, that was great. Thanks for the call. Number's 877-301-8970. Where do you want to go?
We'll go to Nicholas in Salem. Nicholas, are you there?
Hi,
Yeah, I'm
Nicholas.
here. How's it going?
Hi.
That's good. Good to
Wait a
hear from
second.
you.
Is this true? There's a note on it. You're not really Zoe's brother.
I am.
Oh my God! Are Zoe here? I didn't know why it was in. Is he okay? She's. Oh, you should. If you could see her face, she is proudly
I forgot.
smiling.
Zoe worked at Market Basket as a
Zoe
kid.
worked there, and she is proudly smiling. Zoe should come in here and run this segment.
Wait, what'd you say, Nick? What'd you say, Nicholas?
Market Basket was my first job as well.
Oh, what did you do there?
away.
What years?
I was a bagger. I think it was like 2002 for a year. We pulled amicably because back then they had a policy around long hair, and I believe they updated that policy and progressed with the times. A testament to the stakeholder engagement on Market Basket side.
So how do you feel about the current conflict there, Nicholas?
In a way, it feels like an inevitability. And, I was like on vacation now, actually. And when this popped, I was like, I felt compelled. I got to call in. If you looked at the 2004 protests, and I saw you had a clip from Tom Traynor, who I believe retired after 50 years last year. Congratulations, Tom.
Incredible.
It really was an emblematic story around stakeholder versus shareholder capitalism. And if we kind of look at the progression over these next 10 years, I think we've definitely progressed further on the macro away from stakeholder capitalism, but Market Basket has held strong in that sense. And it feels interesting. Obviously, there's a little bit of speculation still around what it's actually about, but, kind of notes on the table, it does look like it's some form of power struggle, likely related to that same kind of concepts around, employee profit sharing, potentially selling to private equity and cash. And if that is the case, I think it's going to be a really, really interesting question around, in this climate that's definitely different than 10 years ago.
That's a great point.
How much of the same happens.
Hey, Nicholas, before you go, who was a better
come back?
Who was a better Market Basket employee, you or your sister?
Oh, 100%, Zoe.
Oh wow! So
laughing.
I have a hypothetical for you. So if Zoe was the CEO and you were the board member, would you just throw her under the bus?
Never. I think I would listen to the leader of the company that has directed me to. I believe in 2014, 2024, coming out of the pandemic, USA Today ranked them one of the top 5 grocery stores in the country, even though it's a local chain. In terms of their ability to, manage with the inflationary environment, keeping prices low for consumers, keeping wages high for employees. And that's just increasingly rare. So,
hey, before you go, Nicholas, Nicholas, we got a ton of calls. Before you go, I just want to ask you one last thing. What do you think about Bob Hoyt?
Bob Hoyt saw he was recently recognized by the Globe for his Market Basket Classics playlist, which I believe could become the answer to the revolution as we move forward. Exactly. But a very solid guy, someone I've worked with over the past 10 years of my life at various different companies, someone that shares a passion for, the rarity of what Market Basket is providing
to the
community.
You're fabulous, and we love your sister.
We do.
Thank you
She's
so much,
so
Nicholas.
great.
By the way, he mentioned the Market Basket superfan, Bob Hoyt, and his medley of songs. This is of in-store music at Market Basket. Here's just a little taste of what Hoyt created. Todd Rundgren from Philadelphia, by the way. Okay, enough of Bob Hoyt. Thank you very much.
It's like a yacht rock for markets. It's got a little bit of an edge, but.
Let's go to Mary in Watertown. You're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about the latest Market Basket struggle. Welcome, Mary.
Hey, how are you?
We're great.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Listen, I've worked in 2 Market Basket stores, one in Gloucester and one in Danvers, and I work in grocery, and I will not shop at Market Basket, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
They will not promote women.
Oh,
if you look at the number of managers in Market Basket, you will see it is all men, and there are many, many talented women who work there. I also happen to think the whole family thing is a distraction. I think it's a PR sham, promoting themselves as, supporting the working people. They really don't. When Market Basket doesn't fire anybody because they don't want to pay unemployment. They don't want to go through unemployment situations. What they'll do is if they don't like an employee, they'll bust them down to one shift a week. They're really, I think I was not impressed. And I will go to Shaw's because Shaw's is union.
Mary, can I tell you something? And I don't, obviously your experience is your experience. I wasn't kidding when I mentioned, I probably asked, I would say through the years, 100 workers at the Market Basket in Somerville what they think about Arthur T. And I would say 90% of them have met him, and 100% of those who have met him praised how he treated the workers there. And a lot of those workers were women. So again, I'm not quarreling with your personal experience, but there's you're not, that isn't a uniform opinion. But Mary, thanks for your perspective.
Yeah, and Mary does, she highlights that there is a story behind this that is gonna break, that we can't quite figure out right now, about the board, his sisters, and him, that may disclose a lot of inner workings of this family and a chain that we all love.
We got to take a break, Juliet Kayyem.
We do. We're talking about the latest delicious family drama unraveling over at Market Basket. It is time for a quick break, but more of your calls and texts are just around the corner. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. And our number is 1-877-301-8970.
Taiwan's birth rate has been falling for years. That's meant a dramatic drop in the number of university-age students, so some colleges there are now having to shut their doors. I'm Marco Werman. How a lack of students is impacting higher education in Taiwan, plus the day's top global news. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Boston Public Art Triennial, bringing new public artworks and events open to the public to neighborhoods across Boston from May through October. Learn more at thetriennial.org. And Creative Playthings, committed to helping kids develop social skills as they play. Creative Playthings offers custom swing set designs and recommendations to fit any yard space. Learn more at creativeplaythings.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Juliet Kayyem from Harvard's Kennedy School is sitting in for Marjorie today. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Shirley Leung from The Globe and former Secretary of Public Safety Andrew Cabral will be sitting in as host tomorrow at the Boston Public Library. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the state of affairs over at Market Basket, where the CEO, who was the hero of the internal family battle of a decade ago, Arthur T. Demoulas, was placed on paid leave by the board, apparently at the insistence of his three sisters who used to be on his side. And it's causing us to think back about incredible happening a decade ago, and also to get your thoughts on Market Basket in your life. The number's 877-301-88970. Where do you want to go, Juliet?
I think we're going to go to Joanne, who is a big fan of Market Basket.
Hi, Joanne. Welcome.
Hi there. Good morning.
Hi.
I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener.
Love both. Thank you very much.
I love Boston Public Radio almost as much as I love Market Basket. I was a widowed single mother for almost 20 years, and raising a family, on the North Shore of Boston, I felt like Market Basket always empowered me. Every week when I went there, I thought, I can do this. Look at the value I get here. And in my book club, I used to scold my book club members and be like, why would you go to Whole Foods when the produce is so good at Market Basket? It turns over. You see the volume that they go through, and the people that work there are just wonderful. And there's a woman, I always go to her line. Her name's Colleen. She's in my Market Basket, and she's in her 80s. And she does Habitat for Humanity on the weekends. And I can't tell you how much joy it brings me to have this positive experience every week. And I really understand that there's challenges with running a business and a family-owned business, of course, but I will continue going there, and it just makes me feel great when I go there.
I tell you, that was one hell of a first call, Joanne.
Yeah.
And I want you to know before you go, I love Boston Public Radio almost as much as Market Basket, too. So we're in the same boat. Joanne, thanks for the call.
I think I really love Pauline. So a shout out to Pauline at the Market Basket and her weekends at Habitat for Humanity.
By the way, it is true that if you haven't been to Market Basket, and again, I can't speak to every community. I've only been to a few. Everybody's so warm and so welcoming and so helpful. It's just really,
as I said, if you can get past the parking lot.
I can't believe you mentioned that. It is really true.
It is
On my
ridiculous.
honor, as much as a discount matters to me, and almost nothing matters quite as much, I have driven in and left on, I'd say, 25% of the time because the parking lot is packed. And you're right. People probably have parked there and moved to Cincinnati
Exactly.
because they got a good spot.
It cannot possibly be. There's like 2,000 parking spaces, and they are always full in Somerville. So anyways, if you can get through the rage of trying to find a parking space, it is a great shopping experience.
Matt Newton, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi there.
Hi, guys. First time, long time.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. So, I go to Market Basket all the time. I've been going there for a long time, and I'm just so inspired by what these guys are doing. I'm going to support them until the end. And it really hurts me to support them because I save so much money shopping there. And it's an incredible place where, it's a great deal for the customers and the employees seem supported by their employers, which, I've worked at a small local company for 10 years. And before, my boss is great and we're all super loyal to him. And, before that, I'd never had that. So, when you know what that's like, it's a valuable thing. So I hope the best for him. I hope it all works out.
Well, I can tell you, I people who listen to the show know I was a union president in my former life, so I know a little bit about this kind of thing. I don't know if I've ever heard of a situation where workers were willing to walk off their jobs in support of their boss. I mean, it was incredible, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be 10 years later in this little struggle, but it was incredible. Matt, excellent call. Thank you for making it. We really appreciate it.
And one of the things here that is true is like we do want this to work out, as Matt was saying. Like you want whatever is going on with the family, as people who really like the brand, really like the company, and because what it means for the state and the community, they got to get this right. And if this thing is about to implode, a lot of us are going to be upset.
I agree completely. Where do you want to go next?
We're going to go to Ron in Lowell.
Hi, Ron. Hi.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure. What's up?
I'm from Lowell originally.
Yep.
And I was born within a mile of the very first store.
Wow.
RDT described it as ground zero to me one time. I currently live within a mile of two different stores in Seabrook, and all through the last go-round, we faithfully boycotted those two stores and had to go elsewhere. And I hope it doesn't shake out that way, but we'll do it again if we have to.
Listen to these people.
I know.
Ron, that was great. Thanks for your call. You know what occurred to me when we're talking about stunning employers who have the loyalty of their staff? Do you remember Aaron Feuerstein, who was the CEO of Malden Mills? And I bet you a lot of people do. This is a guy who owned a company with 3 or 4,000 employees. The place burns down, and he kept every single worker on the payroll. I think at least through Christmas or something. And he may have been recognized by Clinton at a State of the Union kind of thing. Well, but it was incredible. And you don't see these kinds of things often enough, and they deserve mention.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, in the spirit of transparency, it's not all kumbaya with Market Basket. Workers did sue in 2020 over alleged mismanagement of retirement plans. But I have to say, if you're on Reddit right now, the Reddit people are ready. We're reading things like Artie's Army standing by, and we ride at dawn. But you won't find a parking space. If you ride at dawn, you will not find a parking space.
Exactly. Sheila in Provincetown, welcome to the show. Hey, Sheila, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for taking the call.
Thank you.
I wanted to say how supportive I am of Arthur T. and all of his policies. I love the people who are in the Bourne location or the Sagamore Bridge.
Right over the bridge, right.
I live in Provincetown. Once a month, I drive the hour and 15 minutes to get to that store.
Yeah.
because I save $100 every trip, and I can get my gas for about 50 cents cheaper than any place else on the Cape. So I just support him and would do whatever's necessary to keep that store there.
I'm embarrassed. I don't know. Do they sell gas at the Market Basket in Sagamore?
No. Well, there's another chain of stores that I shop locally because I have to. It's the only one here. And they run a gas station, and so I get points off down there, plus the cheaper prices. So.
Fabulous. Hey, Sheila, it was a great call. I was in Provincetown this weekend. It was fabulous as always. Thanks so much for the call. We appreciate it.
And it is true that Market Basket Foundation does give a lot to things that matter to folks on the Cape as well, environmental and other organizations through their charitable fund. So
listen to Harmony in Providence, the text. I absolutely love Market Basket. I view them like family. I would fist fight someone in the name of Market Basket. They have played such a huge role in my childhood and adult life. I wish more companies valued their employees and customers the way Market Basket does. As Juliet said a minute ago, and that woman had called before, no one is suggesting this is the perfect place.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of corporate America, it appears that when you have so many workers feeling so good about a workplace and how they're treated and their boss, it deserves a little attention, I think.
And Harmony, you know, your mention of a fist fight, who can forget that RDT and RDS also got into a fist fight in court once. So you're right there with them. But this family, let's just say this family has a lot of issues.
Darlene in Medway, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I am an avid Market Basket fan. I'll be right behind RDT all the way. I just want to say I have family that's worked for Market Basket for 30-something years, and they love the store. And, you know, my nephew's worked his way up into management, and we all support Market Basket. So I'm ready for the fight.
Before you go, you have a relative who has literally worked there 3.5 decades?
Yes, he started as a bag boy.
That's
and
great.
now he's an assistant manager.
Oh, wow.
That's great. Well, it's sort of like Zoe's brother was saying, Tom Trainer, 50 years before he retired.
Yep.
I mean, that is really, it's really something. Darlene, thank you for the call and congratulations to your relative. I mean, it really is, it's really amazing.
There are very few companies that you could say this about that people would call in and be like,
well, that's totally
I'm going to war for these people.
Well, it's not only that. You know, Marjorie talks about her father worked, I can't remember, I think it was Firestone, some tire company. And that was at the time, which was the last generation, when it was expected if you went to work for a company and you acted as a good employee, it could be your place for life. Those places don't exist anymore. We just heard about a 35-year guy, Tom Trainer, 50 years, retired.
Zoe and her brother have bonding memories over it.
Many days, Zoe said, I wish I was still at Market Basket.
I'm sure she does. But
so we thank, these calls were amazing, and we're going to stay on top of this. And, we should try to get, if this progresses, we're going to get some of the people in. RDT does not do interviews, by the way. We have tried, and that's another thing to his credit, but we're going to try to dig deeper
figure
into
out
the story.
I mean,
so the
sisters have got to know how popular RDT is, so this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But RDT has only spoken through a sports person so far.
Yeah.
So Zoe, we're glad that you chose GBH over bagging at Market Basket. That's all the time we have, and thanks for all your calls and texts. Coming up after the noon NPR and local news, it's former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrea Cabral. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, and former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. BostonSpeakers.org. When Korean immigrant Chol-soo Lee is wrongly convicted of murder in 1973, he finds himself in a fight for freedom. Don't miss Independent Lens. Free Chol-soo Lee, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on hour 2 of BPR. ICE says they conduct targeted immigration enforcement, not raids. But a sweep on Martha's Vineyard resulted in the arrest of 40 people, most of whom were simply on their way to work. We'll talk with former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrew Cabral about ICE's actions here, plus what Donald Trump's continued pardon flexes mean for the rule of law in America.
And I'm Juliette Kayyem, in for Marjorie Egan. Then Ambassador Nicholas Burns was the United States' top diplomat in China under the Biden administration. He's back, and he joins us for a conversation about Trump's trade war and international diplomacy. Is the United States headed for a massive brain drain? All that, plus our Two More Things segment, next on the second hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Lawyers from the Trump administration and Harvard are in court over the president's bid to prevent the university from enrolling international students. We've learned a federal judge extended a temporary order blocking the administration. NPR's Windsor Johnson reports some critics say the move could undercut the Ivy League school's global competitiveness and its financial stability.
International students make up more than a quarter of Harvard University's student body. Miriam Feldblum is the CEO of the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration. She says the pause in student visa interviews needs to be reversed immediately.
What's clear is that international students are essential to the global and domestic talent pipeline that colleges and universities, including Harvard, are creating.
Harvard's hardly alone. Illinois Tech and Carnegie Mellon have the highest rates of international students. And without tuition, administrators warn many colleges and universities could face significant budget shortfalls. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
The U.S. Court of International Trade delivered a setback to President Trump's use of sweeping tariffs to force other countries to renegotiate trade deals with the U.S. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the stakes are enormous.
A dozen states and 5 businesses challenged the president's authority to unilaterally levy those taxes. And last night, a specialized trade court handed those challengers a decisive victory. The unanimous 3-judge panel ruled that under the Constitution, it's Congress that has exclusive power to regulate trade and impose tariffs.
NPR's Scott Horsley, the administration says it will appeal. Russia is calling for another round of peace talks with Ukraine next week in Istanbul, Turkey. The proposal comes as President Trump has increased his criticism of Russia over a recent wave of attacks on Ukraine. From Moscow, NPR's Charles Maines has the latest.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow would present a written memorandum with proposals for a future peace accord and hoped Ukraine would embrace the negotiations. The Russian call to resume negotiations came as Trump suggested he would back off threats of new sanctions on Moscow if it undermined the prospects of a peace deal. Yet in calling for the latest talks, Lavrov repeated Moscow's demands that any agreement address the root causes of the conflict, a term widely interpreted as a Kremlin demand for influence over Ukraine's future. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
Israel says it's expanding settlements in the West Bank. It plans to create 22 new outposts in the occupied Palestinian territory. Most countries recognize such settlements as illegal under international law, not Israel. Defense Minister Israel Katz says his government's making a strategic move to protect Israeli security by preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state. It's NPR News.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. The president of Harvard urged graduates in his commencement address this morning not to become complacent. And a federal judge reportedly just blocked the Trump administration from banning Harvard from enrolling foreign students. That's according to media reports. President Alan Garber urged the graduates to expand their thinking.
My hope for you, members of the class of 2025, is that you stay comfortable being uncomfortable, starting with the folding chairs on which you sit right now.
Now, the Department of Homeland Security was trying to remove Harvard's certification to admit international students. Attorneys for Harvard said if the judge didn't grant an injunction, it would cost the university about 25% of the student body. Market Basket's board of directors is trying to reassure shoppers that they won't be negatively impacted by the board's decision to place CEO Arthur T. DeMoulis on paid leave. Board members are accusing DeMoulis of trying to organize a work stoppage. A spokesman for the CEO calls the allegations a cover for a hostile takeover. Shoppers remembered not being able to go up and down the aisles at their favorite Market Basket when workers walked off the job to support DeMoulis when he was in a power struggle with his cousin in 2014. The board says this latest conflict won't lead to higher prices or to employees losing their jobs. In sports, the Red Sox get a day off. They'll play the Braves tomorrow night. Cloudy, cooler, highs in the 60s this afternoon. A chance of showers tomorrow, highs in the 70s. Rain could continue into Saturday, highs to 70. And sun and clouds on Sunday with highs in the 60s. Right now, 64 in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, committed to giving job listings increased visibility with relevant candidates through its sponsored jobs feature. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Welcome to Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio. I am Jim Browdy. Marge Regan is out today, filling in for Harvard Kennedy School's Juliette Kayyem, also from CNN, former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security under Barack Obama. Hello again, Juliette. How you feeling after an hour?
I feel great, but man, only an hour through. This is exhausting. I'm so impressed you do this every day for 3 hours.
I'm impressed we do it, too. And an anonymous texter says, hi, Juliette is doing great.
Thank you.
We also miss Andrea Cabral and Shirley. Also, where is Sue O'Connell? So, speaking of that, we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, and in anticipation, apparently, on their part, Andrea Cabral and Shirley the Young are filling in for us tomorrow's host at the Boston Public Library. Live Music Friday with Grammy-nominated violinist Christina Day Martinson and more. And speaking of the former Suffolk County Sheriff and the former Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, here she is. Hi, Andrea. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. I'm only laughing because Juliette said how exhausting it is, and it totally is exhausting.
I'm like literally mapping out my nap at 2:30. I'm like, I got to drive. I got 11-minute drive home. I'll check in on folks, and then I'm like 2:30. I am in bed. I am so impressed, and I know you do this a lot and are taking over tomorrow. So I am impressed with you as well.
Thank you very much, Juliette. I'm impressed with Jim and Marjorie because 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Every week, 52 weeks a year. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, enough already, you two. Andrea, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take it away, Juliette.
Oh, great. So let's just start with the obvious here, which is lots going on in your world. And so we wanted to talk to you about these pardons that we're hearing about left and right with the Trump administration. You were a DA, you were a prosecutor, you were a sheriff, you are in this space. What do you make of these pardons and like its impact on how people behave? Like, is there just a world out there that's going to do whatever it wants and then get pardoned?
Well, every time I do this segment, I more and more try to encourage people to look at things like this in a larger context, right? To not take these things that, dot the news very frequently as just these one-offs. There is a purpose behind all of this. And Trump pardoning tax cheats, people who were duly convicted under the law, whose only sort of connection to getting a presidential pardon is that they perhaps share a reality TV background with him, or suggested by a celebrity, or most importantly, have a have been able to either directly or through relatives send money to him through his campaign. It's the first part of this is that he will sell anything.
Yeah.
Especially those things connected directly to our belief in a fair democracy. All of that is for sale. So these pardons, Trump, people, I hope, understand it by this point, certainly, that Trump is nothing more than a transactional human being. He does nothing for anyone that doesn't benefit him in some way or his agenda.
I just want to I want to highlight this point. We got a lot to talk about today, but these are people who were convicted convicted by a jury, found guilty by jury, or pled. Like it's like you can't make this stuff up. They literally said, "I'm guilty of these horrible crimes that actually impact people." And it's not just the white collar crimes. I mean, there are other crimes that are being pardoned, and yet Trump says, it was a witch hunt, even though they pled guilty or a jury found them guilty.
Well, people should understand, first of all, the difference between pardon and clemency. So clemency is when president commutes a sentence. So you may have already served a certain amount of time and it gets shortened because your sentence has been commuted and you're released. A pardon, especially a full and unconditional pardon, absolutely forgives the conviction. It has always been thought, at least since a case in 1925 called Burdick versus the United States, it's always been believed that the acceptance of a pardon implies an admission of guilt. But that's not strictly true. You don't have to admit that you're guilty in order to accept a pardon. And in Trump's case, sometimes he doesn't wait until the conviction is already in place before he pardons someone. In the case of these people, it appears that everybody had been duly convicted. But you're absolutely right. And a big part of this is how much it destroys people's faith in the criminal justice system, because if pardons are handed out, presidents have been pretty sparing in handing out pardons. There have certainly been controversial ones here and there. He pardoned 26 people in this last incarnation of pardons. It's 26 people, not the least of whom is a tax cheat, much like himself. He himself is a convicted felon. You have a convicted felon pardoning people who've committed crimes similar to the crimes that he's convicted and essentially letting them completely off the hook, because if nobody is guilty, then he's not guilty of anything.
Yesterday when Marjorie and I talked briefly about this Paul Walzak, whose mother gave $1 million, and lo and behold, to attend a Trump dinner, and lo and behold, 3 weeks later, her son is pardoned, and not only is he not have to go to jail, but the $4.4 million in restitution for stealing from his employees and the taxpayers of America, he doesn't have to give. Somebody called and said, I made a comment like, "Can you imagine anybody else getting away with this?" And someone texted, I think appropriately, during the break and said, "Well, why did you not mention Mark Rich, who was a financier who gave money, who was donated by Clinton, donated to Clinton, and he pardoned him at the end of the term?" And what Marjorie and I both said, and we'll see if we're proven to be right, in Trump world, this is like a 1 hour story, not for us, but in general. And you move on to the next klepto act or whatever it is. Mark Rich was talked about, and this is not to excuse Clinton at all, by the way, was talked about for weeks, if not months. This was something that consumed the American people, and this is like another day in the life of Donald Trump. And, earlier today, I think it was with Chuck Todd, Juliet mentioned that he's contemplating pardoning the people who were involved in the attempted kidnapping of the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. And as you said a minute ago, there's always a connection, usually financial. In this one, in 2020, Whitmer placed some of the blame for the kidnapping plot on Trump and his rhetoric, saying, quote, "Trump refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these two Michigan militia groups." So I'm sure it's been brought to his attention, and that may be the motivation. I'm not really sure. But what's also interesting is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, historically there's been a pardon, I don't know if it's called this, a pardon office in the White House, where documents are prepared for the president to consider. He looks at them, he can, whatever, considers. Here, Trump just gets a call from somebody or gets an urge, and all of a sudden there's a pardon. Or is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement, and it goes directly to my point about the real purpose of this, beyond stating his need for revenge, his greed, his ability to exact a price, usually financial, for anything that he does. It goes to undermining the democracy.
Yeah.
That is the real point of this. And it is so important for people to keep that in mind. And so, no, I think you're absolutely right that the reason that pardons were done so sparingly is because it was always understood that a certain amount of, Mark Rich notwithstanding, a certain amount of honor should be involved in issuing a pardon, that there should be balance, that there should be documentation, that a full record should be created, and that people looking back on that pardon should be able to see what the president balanced against the person's conduct to create a fairness in issuing the pardon. Trump doesn't want there to be fairness. He simply wants to exercise power and to show people that he has the power to give and to take. That is why they're being done this way. And that is why Congress, nobody in Congress is questioning it, even though the president's pardon power is virtually unfettered. You don't have a branch of government that is a check or a balance against what he's trying to do. They're not even speaking out against it.
Right. The courts can't even step in. I mean, this is his ultimate flex. I mean, this is the thing. You know, look, the courts can check him on tariffs. China can taco him, as we've been talking about. Trump always chickens out him on tariffs. He's bumping up against checks. This is his flex. This is the one thing that he can do that no one can question. And we can sit here and go, oh my God, a mother paid $1 million for the son, or these horrible people are getting a pardon. Or in the Governor Whitmer case, I want to just remind people the facts of that case. It was not just taking her hostage. It was live streaming a fake court case that she would then, under threat, have to admit all of her vices. But they were also gonna bomb, or they attempted or planned bombing bridges where Michigan citizens would be killed. So for those who think, oh, this is just Democrats versus Republicans, these guys were the real deal.
By the way, I mentioned the Mark Rich criticism we got yesterday. A couple of people in Texas said Biden pardoned his degenerate kid, gave a blanket pardon to Liz Cheney. And by the way, we talked about them ad nauseum, and we criticized those decisions by Biden, that it was both a political and, Marty and I thought, a moral mistake on his part. But I have to say, for those of you who are excoriating us for that, you can add up all the pardons that Biden did, add up the ones that Clinton did, and please write us back and say if they even come close to the magnitude of what Donald Trump has done in a few days, with many more to come. And I think you won't be up to the task, but feel free. I want to move on to something else where you have some firsthand information. We had Mara Dolan join us briefly yesterday. She's a newly elected governor's counselor, the first public defender, actually, ever on the governor's council. And there is a work stoppage that started, I think, on Tuesday among bar advocates. And explain for people what they are. Indigent, low-income people charged with a crime in this country are constitutionally entitled to a lawyer. This federal constitution entitled to a lawyer. In Massachusetts, we have this weird system where roughly 20% of those clients are represented by employees of the public defender's office, and about 80% are represented by private sector lawyers, bar advocates they're called, who volunteer their time to work for very little money. And part of this work stoppage is because there's not only very little money, but the hourly fee is roughly half of what it is in surrounding states in New England. And even if they got the increase that's being contemplated by the legislature, it would still be far less than they get for their private sector clients. I wanted your reflection on this as somebody who used to be in the DA's office, but I also want you to reflect on the other side of the equation, which is how poorly ADAs are paid. And even if most people don't give a damn about people who represent poor people who are defendants, I assume most people care pretty deeply about young, for the most part, prosecutors like you were in the Suffolk County office. Both sides of that equation are treated pretty poorly when it comes to the pocketbook, aren't they?
They are, because it's always sort of been understood, even though this isn't actually, I don't even think the statistics would bear this out, that they're fungible on both sides, as public defenders and as prosecutors, and you'll always be able to cycle in a whole new group of young prosecutors and young public defenders who are willing to work for far less money. The problem with that is that cases are very serious. People's liberty is a very serious thing, whether you're on the side of seeking ultimately to convict and possibly take it away, or on the side of defending it, or defending against a conviction. It's very important to have experience in those offices, not just to teach those younger prosecutors, but to have experience in the courtroom so people are getting an adequate defense. First of all, what I'd say is pay these people. The public defenders, the bar advocates public defenders strictly do criminal defense work. They work for the state, and that's all they do. Bar advocates are people who are in private practice who are also devoting some of their legal talent to representing indigent defendants. They can see more clearly than anybody else the difference in the rate of pay between what they would get from a private client and what they would get from the state. So pay them. If you can fill a budget bill at the last minute with earmarks for your district, you can pay public defenders. It's, again, about what this does to undermine democracy. It is understood that people who cannot afford an attorney will be given one, and the failure to pay them means that you don't care about that fundamental constitutional right. It's $29 million annually. That's what it would cost them to pay these bar advocates.
And our folks are getting
what they're due.
Right. It's not just that you're asking for money. If you look at the comparative market, our folks are getting paid significantly less than those in Rhode Island and other states. So it's not even like, oh, just give them more money. It's like this is a very important issue. This is a state that should take this issue seriously, and we're paying people significantly less than we do in the neighboring state.
Right. And DAs, I will say, even though their ADAs are not paid what they should be paid for given their workload, DAs' budgets tend to be a little bit better than the public defender's budget. Who gets paid what in the DA's office is entirely up to the district attorney. They have control over that to some degree. It should be higher, but they've historically, I believe, have been treated a little bit better than the public defenders. And within that, the bar advocates fall, I think, a tier lower even than the state public defenders, the Committee for Public Counsel Services.
I want to seize on one thing you said, though, for people who are listening and saying it's a tight budget, they're federal cuts. Obviously, you didn't hear our conversation with Mari yesterday because we were on a similar vein as you were. $29 million is what the total cost of the increase that the bar advocates are looking for. And we just picked one example. One of those last-minute secret slip-ins into the budget was $25 million by the Speaker of the House for a garage in his home district of Quincy. And so the average person has got to decide if money is short, do you want a garage in Quincy, slipped in with no debate, or do you want to make sure that lawyers who are operating way under market, even if they get their raise, are paid at least a decent amount to ensure that the constitutional rights of low-income people who have not been found guilty of a crime are protected? And I think the answer is pretty clear, so the money is there if they want it. We're talking to Andrea Cabral.
And before we let you go, we did want to raise these raids in Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. About 40 people have been detained, only 2 of them. Do we have any sense that they actually had committed a previous crime? We now know that the Attorney General Campbell about 30 minutes ago, while we were on air with you, put out guidance for immigrants, families, and communities on ICE enforcement, as she had promised to do on the show last week. So you were a sheriff, you worked in the community, you cared about law enforcement. Is there anything that can be done regarding these massive raids?
Well, let me start by saying in 2025, in the United States of America, people are being disappeared off the streets, from courthouses, from churches, from schools, from their neighborhoods and communities, from supermarkets, by immigration and customs enforcement in the democracy that currently exists.
Who are often not identified. I mean, that's the crazy thing. They're not wearing jackets. They're not having badges. It's like, who are these people?
And they're being taken by people who are not strictly wearing the uniform of ICE. They are masked. That is hugely important to understand. They are taken sometimes by violence. And when questions are raised, as they would be, about why these people are being disappeared in such a fashion, about their criminal records, ICE has its marching orders from this administration. They don't give any information. That is exactly what happens in countries that are not democracies. Yeah. So that is happening right here. And so I think that, we're struggling to figure out how to push back on it. We're finding out that sometimes when the federal government says, you know what, I'm not telling you anything, and there's nothing you can do about it, you get to go before a judge. But how quickly or how slowly a judge acts on that, and whether or not a judge holds anybody to account on it, we're apparently still figuring that out. So that's why the AG is putting out guidance for people on how to keep themselves safe from the federal government. How to keep themselves safe from the federal government. People who have constitutional rights, you don't need citizenship to have constitutional rights. And again, it's about undermining democracy. If they can take away the rights of people who are not citizens, it is a hop, skip, and a jump to taking away your rights as a citizen. So don't think they won't come for you, because they will.
Before you go, I just want to reiterate what you were both saying. Yeah. This allegation, and Governor Healy said this is what she heard too, but unconfirmed, that only 2 of these people had some sort of criminal record. One, we don't know if that's even true, because they say that Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13, and there's no proof that is true. Right. The other people, this is really important for those of you who text us and say, well, he said he was going to get rid of the rapists and the murderers. The vast majority of these people were stopped on their way to work. They were going to work, and they were stopped. Are you a citizen of the country, they're asked, and then they're snatched. I mean, this, as you say, against your own government, and I think that is the most critical point you can possibly make.
Can I just add one more thing?
Please.
All of the people who are texting in and saying that, they want to, sort of delude themselves into believing that these are rapists and criminals. If that were true, the government would be the first entity to let you know what their records are. So
exactly right.
But the fact that they're not telling anybody even who these people are, if you don't know who they are, then you can't check the record and show that the government is lying to you. But second of all, for all these people who are texting in, your president is a convicted felon, and that doesn't seem to bother you at all.
So on that note, we got to go.
Yep.
Andrea, it's great to see you as always. Good luck hosting tomorrow.
Good luck. Take a nap.
By the way, a texter.
I'm taking a nap right now.
You both were complaining about how long the show is. A texter a couple of minutes ago at This Spirit said, "Oh, it's so hard talking for 3 hours.
It's so hard.
So hard
when you think about it." Well, we've been speaking
Andrea,
and
we'll
talking.
See you later. Take care.
We're very lucky. We've been speaking and talking with former Suffolk County Sheriff, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral. She joins us weekly. Thank you so much. She's guest hosting tomorrow after her nap. After a quick break, we'll talk with Nicholas Burns, former U.S. Ambassador to China, and now my colleague back at Harvard. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com GBH News. And our friends on YouTube are still chatting away about Market Basket. We're listening.
Colleges in the U.S. are facing a steep challenge, one that's been brewing for 18 years.
It's known as the demographic cliff.
I'm Kurt Carapezza from GBH News.
And I'm John Marcus from the Hechinger Report. On our podcast, College Uncovered, we look at how the Great Recession not only crashed the economy, but is threatening the entire university system in America.
Subscribe and listen to College Uncovered wherever you get podcasts.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate. Their website includes listings of homes from Hingham to Duxbury, as well as information about each South Shore community. More about the team and current listings at deanandhamilton.com.
And Harrow International School, New York, offering day and boarding education for grades 6 through 12 on a 170-acre waterfront campus on Long Island, opening this fall. More information is available at harrownewyork.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Juliette Kayyem is sitting in for Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Andrew Cabral and Shirley Leung are sitting in for both of us tomorrow at the Boston Public Library's terrific show. I hope you join them. Joined now in Studio 3 by Ambassador Nicholas Burns. He's the Roy and Barbara Goodman Family Professor of the Practice of Diplomacy and International Relations at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, where Juliette works as well. He's also the founder and faculty chair of the Future of Diplomacy Project. And there is a future of diplomacy. Are you nodding? Yes, he is. Thank you.
There's a project.
He served
There is a project. We don't know about the future of diplomacy.
6 presidents, 9 secretaries of state, and most recently, from 2021 up until this year, he was the U.S. ambassador to China. Ambassador Burns, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for being here.
Good to be back, Jim. Good to be with my friend Juliette as well.
Do you know our offices are about 10 feet away from each other? It's very sweet. It's very sweet. It's nice to have you here. I just wanted to, before we get into the substance of our conversation, that just a few minutes ago, a court determined, and I want to get this right because we've got so much litigation going on against Harvard University, that a judge is going to block Trump efforts to stop Harvard from enrolling foreign students. There was a stay last week. This seems to be the substantive decision that Harvard, at least until their appeals go on, will stop the Trump administration from disallowing Harvard from enrolling foreign students. The case itself, I think, was based in large part on what Trump has tweeted himself, that this has everything to do with what of the First Amendment and almost nothing to do with concerns about who these foreign students are. So without further ado, Nick, it is nice to have you also back on the show, because I think this is your first visit back since being ambassador.
It sure is.
That's great.
What's your reaction? I mean, did you go to commencement? Are you coming from commencement?
No, I listened to it. I listened to the entire commencement. And I must say, this is a just decision.
Yeah.
Here's how we might think about it. How is it possible for American students to live in the world, prepare to go out in the world, in whatever profession, without any access to foreigners? We live in the world. We are 339 million of the 8 billion people in the world. How can the United States succeed in the world if we cut ourselves off? This is a destructive decision by the Trump administration. It's vengeful, and it'll ruin all of our universities if it's carried out. I don't believe it will, and this is a very positive decision by the judge today.
Well, except let me take issue with that, Ambassador. You say if it gets to be carried out. And maybe I'm just being unduly negative, even if it isn't carried out. We had the co-president of the student body, Abdullah Sail, with us on Friday from Pakistan. He wasn't sure if he was going to be able to graduate. He is, because of this stay. We had Leo Garden, who's been all over the news, a sophomore from Sweden. And the sophomore wasn't sure if he'd want to come back next year, even though he loves Harvard, because of the threat hanging over the head. Abdullah said, I'm not sure what I'd advise a high school student in Pakistan if he wanted to come to Harvard. So hasn't Trump already won this battle, even if it turns out he loses in the courts?
I don't think he's won the battle, but he's certainly put fear into the hearts and minds of our students. And I agree with you, Jim, and Juliette has, I'm sure, faced this. I've had countless students in the last couple of days at Harvard Kennedy School say to me, international students, how can I come back if I'm going to get kicked out by the Trump administration on October 1 and November 1? This is money. This is people's futures. We have other students who are planning to go home, some to China this summer to see their mums and dads, and now are not going to go home because I don't think they'll get back in through Logan Airport. So it's a destructive decision.
Yeah. Speaking of Chinese students, you obviously heard Secretary of State Rubio. He's going to aggressively revoke the visas of Chinese students in this country who don't meet certain Trump administration criteria for acceptability. What's your reaction to that?
Well, actually, this is complicated. Number one, the devil's going to be in the details here and how the State Department under Secretary Rubio's leadership, draws the guardrails here. Number two, there are some restrictions that we in the Biden administration followed on Chinese students. So there was a Trump executive order in 2020 in Trump's first term that essentially said if a Chinese student wants to study, let's just say, nuclear weapons design at an American university and appears at our consular window in Embassy Beijing, and they want to go to Caltech or MIT, they're probably not going to get the visa. And that's
I'm okay with that.
I am too. In fact, I, as ambassador, I was very okay with it because there are plenty of Chinese students with ties to their intelligence community or their military. We don't want them in this country, but we can screen for those students, and we do screen effectively for them. And Jim and Juliet knows this. There are 277,000 Chinese students in our country. It is at our universities. It's the second largest population after India. Juliet and I have taught these students. The vast majority of them want to be in this country. They just revel being in a democratic society where they can say what they think and they can Google whatever information they want. They improve the lives and education of the American students. And frankly, a lot of them want to stay and work for our tech companies and be founders of our tech companies.
This is the interesting thing
value.
about this debate. I mean, you and I can talk about sort of the value to our students and the value to the educational system and free thought, but this is a market argument to keep these students here. For either they start companies here, they work for American companies, or they have good feelings about America, so they're not hostile to our market. And it seems like, I don't know, where is that market voice? I mean, we have a lot of academics saying it. You saw, as the ambassador to China, the complicated but mutually beneficial relationship between China and U.S. economically.
Yeah, the other point, I think that's a very good point, Juliet. Look, we are in a huge competition with the government of China on 1,000 different issues, from human rights to technology to our military competition. But we should not make an enemy of 1.4 billion Chinese citizens, many of whom, maybe the majority of whom, would love the chance to travel in our country as tourists here in Boston, Cambridge, or to study in our universities. And Juliet's right. From a purely economic point of view, if you look at the number of biotech CEOs in the Boston, Cambridge, Waltham area, tech CEOs in Silicon Valley, a very high percentage are Indian and Chinese Americans. And so they're adding to our economy, they're innovating. And there's this virtual triangle that made us great after the Second World War. The federal government funds research into our universities. The universities incubate ideas. The private sector brings them to market. There is a big foreign involvement in terms of students and scientists here in Boston and at our university. There's the economic self-interested argument, in addition to the ones that Juliet and I know about how it benefits our students, our American students.
We're talking to the former ambassador to China and many, many other international diplomatic positions, Nicholas Burns. Can we do the other side of the coin, is moving from potentially either expelling or making far less attractive a place to go to school here, what China's going to do as a result of Trump policies. Marco Rubio used to be probably one of the most ardent supporters of USAID when he was a senator, and now he's eviscerating it. We know Voice of America, I think it was yesterday,
over today,
the final group of people were being fired. We've heard tons of stories about how the Chinese government, or at least companies supported by the Chinese government or looked favorably upon, are attempting to lure researchers and others who feel that international people who feel they won't be comfortable here. Is China poised to step into a lot of the holes, human rights, economic, and others that the United States is creating with these policies?
Yes, and it's doing it with glee.
Yeah.
So we have effectively demolished the aid agency, which from a healthcare standpoint is critical to the lives of many Africans who are HIV positive, for instance, or who need a vaccine for their kids, or else the kids will die. And the Chinese have moved into these countries and said, look, the United States is irresponsible. You can't count on the United States, you can count on us. And, we are fighting in a lot of ways a battle of ideas in the global South between Xi Jinping's idea that an authoritarian government is the best form of government. We Americans don't believe that. But right now, we've got two arms tied behind our back by the Trump administration. You've shut down Radio Free Asia and Voice of America. Between them, we think about 330 million Chinese listen to those broadcasts. I mean, if we didn't have these instruments, we'd have to invent them.
Yeah.
And yet Elon Musk and Donald Trump have just summarily, in a week's time, with no planning or forethought, said, off with you.
Yeah.
And we're going to put you all out of work. 8,500 AID employees fired in 10 days back in February. These are own goals.
Yeah.
These are self-inflicted wounds that have diminished the United States and our ability to compete with China.
If you even think about the U.S. ended its $600 million contract with Moderna, a local company, on its flu vaccine contract yesterday, and you think, okay, then you want to make a statement about vaccines, and this is all about Secretary Kennedy. But you think about the global benefit of a company like that and what they're distributing around the world to make the world healthier and the goodwill that that engenders towards the United States. China may fill the vacuum. They may not, but it's going to be a vacuum.
That's for sure. And, there are a lot of people now trying to chronicle the impact of the disappearance, the literal disappearance of U.S. Agency for International Development in places where the level of life, the level of income is so low, people can't afford vaccines. They don't have access to them. And this is what we did well with USAID.
Can you explain? We've done this, but we don't have the background, Marjorie and I, in our inexpert way. Another colleague of yours who recently died, the creation of the term soft power. Explain why being kind and humane to the rest of the world matters to a person living in mid-Massachusetts or Ohio. Why does that matter, Ambassador?
One of the speakers at the Harvard graduation, student speakers, spoke to this, Jim, your question today. She said, and she was very, very effective, she said, we live in a connected world. And we have to connect to the other 8 billion people in the world. We don't live alone in an island. This is not the 17th century. And so we've got to go out and meet people where they are. And sometimes we'll agree with them and disagree with them. But the United States has always been big-hearted. From the Marshall Plan after the Second World War to John F. Kennedy's creation of the Peace Corps to Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, we believe that we have a responsibility, that it's a good thing ethically to do. And now we have an administration. And I was listening yesterday as the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security was on the radio here in Boston, Kristi Noem. Go home. Our borders are closed. We don't want immigrants. And I couldn't help. I was talking to my wife, Libby, and we agreed just counter what she said with what the Statue of Liberty says. We welcome you, legally, of course. We welcome legal immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants. That's what's at stake in what the Trump administration is doing to tear down as populists these institutions and replace them with nothing.
But I want to add to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just the selfless part of it, which is what you're describing, which actually feels really good when I hear you say it.
And is important.
But there's a selfish, the whole soft power notion is people will look favorably upon those who are kind to them in time of need, whether it's food or a vaccine or whatever the hell it is. So even if you don't care about people in the rest of the world, there's a self-interest that matters a lot, isn't there?
There are multiple reasons why we should be outward looking in the world. And the late Joe Nye, the great Joe Nye, colleague and friend of Juliet and I, he pioneered this concept that, of course, we have hard power, our military, our intelligence community, but we've got soft power. What is that? It's the Bill of Rights. It's the fact that we are a diverse society and welcome people of different colors and faiths to this country. And that's made us stronger. And Joe felt this was the unique attraction of the United States. It's not how Putin works. It's not how Xi Jinping works. It's how we in our best days work.
Yeah, I think.
How'd you do, by the way? How'd you do in your 4 years, do you think?
How did I do?
That's one of the toughest jobs in the world, by the way. How did you do? Be honest and self-critical. How'd you do?
I'd say it was the most difficult job I've had, and I go back 45 years in American diplomacy, but probably the most worthwhile because we knew the stakes were high, that my team and I, and it's a team effort, by the way, not just me, and we knew that China's our strongest rival and that we had to counter it and we had to compete with China, but at the same time, find a way to work with China when our interests align, as in climate change, where we're the 2 largest global emitters of carbon. So it was incredibly challenging to deal with the communist regime. It's a communist regime. Every day, the surveillance, the lies, that was difficult, but I expected that. But I think we put forward a good effort. And let me say something about President Biden. I was proud to serve President Biden. He's a good man. And he's a strong man on foreign policy, strong in terms of well-informed and well-intentioned. I think we got a lot done to stabilize the relationship and yet to compete where we had to compete.
Can I ask you, I want to just on the soft power just quickly say, the other aspect that our former colleague, our late colleague Joe Nye talked about was that rule of law actually had a benefit because people would know how we would react. And one of the things you're starting to see with international travel even, or international investments, is if someone spends $8,000 or $10,000 on planning a trip to the United States, they kind of want to know that they can get in. And I think one of the aspects is our consistency. But I'm so glad you mentioned Biden, because I want to know how you think. You have a particular role. You were a diplomat. You're not, a firebrand on Twitter, but I don't know. Maybe you're starting a podcast.
Unlike Juliet, by the way.
I know.
Yes.
I'm somewhat off of it too. But how do you think about your role as a high-level former for not just the Biden administration, but both Republican and Democrats, as we are well into something that you've got to be looking at? And you said you said my conversation with my wife, I'm sure it was probably more animated than "Isn't this bad?" what she's saying. But how are you? I want to know, how are you thinking about your role? How most effective you can be, seeing the destruction of a way of thinking about the world and thinking about the relationship with China by this administration?
Well, two things. First, as I thought about what I wanted to do when I came back, and I left China just before Inauguration Day this past January, I wanted to come back to Harvard and to a university, our university, because, Harvard's mission, and every other university in this country has a mission. That's pursuit of knowledge. It's innovation. It's the world of ideas. It's so important for our future. And I think it's a noble mission to be at a university. Second, my whole life has been about America and the world, and I fear that we're at a time of unilateral American behavior. It's an odd time when we are paying homage to strongmen like Putin and Xi Jinping, our president, President Trump, and yet we are excoriating our best friends and allies, Canada, questioning its sovereignty, Denmark, questioning its sovereignty, making fun of democratic leaders. And I guess one of the big lessons I learned in China, behind enemy lines, as it were, is that, boy, you need your friends and allies, so you got to respect them, and you got to be considerate of them.
On its best day, how would you describe the Trump doctrine? In other words, is there a doctrine there, or is it just I like strong men? Or is there in your world, are there people saying this actually does make sense? America's been relied on for too long. There's going to be spheres of influence rather than superpowers.
There's been no one speech. Where President Trump has articulated a full philosophy is what he's trying to do, but we know what he's trying to do. He's very focused on the economy. He's very focused on trade, on transactions. He's focused on illegal immigration at the border, and he's probably right about that. You got to control your borders. Legal immigration, good. Illegal immigration, not. What bothers me, however, in the Riyadh speech of 2 weeks ago, and the White House promoted this as a major speech, he essentially said, I'm not going to pay attention to human rights. I'm not going to pay attention to authoritarian regimes who abuse their own people, who deny them the civil rights that we have. That is a contradiction and refutation of everything that made America great. That's Joe Nye's thesis. What made us great is that we have values in this country.
Speaking of values, your resume is insane, and we only have a few minutes left. So can we? I hate when people do what I do. Say, can we do a lightning round? Okay, let's do a lightning round.
All right.
Of things you talked about humanitarian work. You provided in one of your thousands of jobs in the diplomatic sector, economic assistance to Palestinians in the West Bank. We spoke to a woman from the UN who zoomed in from Gaza City the other day, who's describing the incredible circumstances there. There are moments when Trump seems to be standing up to, or maybe even ignoring Netanyahu. What's the prospect of any kind of ceasefire and serious humanitarian aid for the Palestinians under Trump?
Prospect of a ceasefire are very low. I think the Israelis have concluded that they want to control all of Gaza. They want to own it. They want to occupy it the way they did after the 67 war. Right now, you have one of the world's, along with Sudan, greatest humanitarian crises, 2 million Gazans with no place to go. I've been to Gaza frequently, and those people need emergency humanitarian support. And I think it's been positive that President Trump has not given the green light to Prime Minister Netanyahu, as far as we can see, for everything he wants to do in Gaza. And he's also not given the green light to Putin. So there are indications, not everything that President Trump does is wrong. He's made some good decisions, and I think keeping his distance from Putin, especially Putin right now, is positive.
But also the converse of that, everything that Joe Biden did was not right, and I continue to believe providing some of the weaponry that we did to Israel was a wrong decision. Do you think so, Nick Burns?
I don't fully agree, simply because, of course, we all remember October 7th, 2023, the Hamas attack. We had to support Israel. And it's right to exist. It was the bloodiest day in Israeli history since 1948. And so I think President Biden, was right to provide the arms. I wish we had success in stopping some of the Israeli incursions into Gaza, because I think they've hurt Israel. Yeah. Not just the United States.
I think there's no question about that. Can we move to another part of the world where you had some involvement? Trump says, someone wrote in the last couple of weeks, every time Trump is questioned about Ukraine, it's going to be resolved in 2 weeks. There's the 2 week rule. He said it, I think, in the last 24 hours, because even though he said he's at the end of his rope, those weren't his words exactly, with Putin, he felt the need, since he was criticizing Putin, to trash Zelensky, too, for absolutely no reason. Is there any prospect of peace there?
There won't be a prospect of peace there, and no chance for a ceasefire, really, unless the United States weighs in on behalf of the European countries that are willing to put their own boots on the ground in security force. They're not asking us to do that. They want two things from us: air power and intelligence. If we can give them that, and if we sanction Putin because he won't come to the peace table, then there's a chance that that's what motivates Putin to be more reasonable. But right now, Putin has nothing to lose. We, the United States, are standing on the sideline. We're not really helping Ukraine much anymore. And the poor Europeans who want to do the right thing are left without the largest and most powerful military of the U.S. So I think that's the mistake.
And Trump is sort of all over the place with Putin, but recently, as Jim was saying, I think he's surprised that he has not gotten Putin to stand down. Where does this end for Trump? Like, what can you see a game plan? Is he trying to play good cop, bad cop, or you think it's just he's not sophisticated and can't believe that Putin has his own interests?
Two things. Last weekend, President Trump was flying back, getting on the helicopter to fly back to Washington, and he came out and he really let Putin have it between the eyes. He's sick of Putin, that Putin wasn't producing. I thought that was a really good thing for President Trump to do. Second, David Ignatius, someone that I deeply admire, wrote a column last week saying, you're not going to get peace either in Gaza or in Ukraine unless you roll up your sleeves and become the mediator and dive in diplomatically. You can't sit in the sidelines and say, because we don't have peace, I'm going to go home. Right. That's been President Trump's rhetoric.
And if I close my eyes, it will happen.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough to put this together. We should not put American troops into Ukraine. No one's asking us to do that. They're saying, please continue the supply of U.S. arms. Please continue the air support. And if we can do that, then there's a chance at a ceasefire.
Can we do one more before you go?
Sure.
Really exploiting this ambassador here, but we have him. Iran, you also had an involvement in the nuclear world of Iran. This is another area where allegedly Trump's going to cut the best deal in the history of the world after undoing a deal that had been done, as I assume most people recall. What are the prospects of that, and also how good might a, quote, great deal be?
I think President Trump has made some good steps here.
How?
Because he rejected the advice of Israel and some others that we effectively have a military approach to this in the last few months. He said, no, I want to negotiate. Steve Witkoff, his friend and Middle East negotiator, I want to give these a chance. He has done that. And now, appropriately, he's also threatened the Iranians, if you cannot agree to a deal that leaves you well short, verifiable, of a nuclear weapon, then we're going to have a real problem, and others will want to resort to force. So I think President Trump so far has handled this very effectively.
You want to do a quiz before you go?
Sure.
How long have you been done what you've done, 45 years?
Excuse me?
How many 45 years you've done what you've done, correct?
Well, since at Harvard, mostly in the State Department, some at Harvard since 1980. Right?
Okay, so how many more years is that than Steve Witkoff has been engaged in diplomacy?
Well, maybe 44 now.
45.
But I wish him well. He's got tough jobs.
Yeah, he not only has a tough job, he has 8 of them. He's going to solve all world crises. I just regret I couldn't ask you about King Charles in Canada. That was on my list.
He's doing the right thing.
He's doing the right thing. We like our northern neighbors.
We have no better ally than Canada.
Yeah.
And to somehow say, as recently as this week, Canada should be our 51st state, it's obnoxious. It's arrogant to say that. The Canadians are really angry with us, and they should be. And every American, when you see a Canadian, you sing the first verse of their beautiful national anthem.
Yeah.
You know, we've missed you. I hope you'll come back soon. Welcome home.
Just across the river.
We know that we're thrilled to see you.
I know where you
Ambassador Nicholas Burns.
Literally next door to me. But it's so great to have you.
Thank
you for coming back.
Juliet.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Bye-bye.
So fun. We've been speaking with former U.S. Ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns. Thanks for coming in again. Coming up after this quick break, just enough time for our Two More Things segment. You are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com, GBH News.
When Israeli author Etgar Keret read his manuscript on October 6th, 2023, he was worried it was too dark. But when he came back to the collection of short stories months later, his country now plunged into a brutal war.
Suddenly I understood what it was about. It was how to stay human in human times.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. That conversation on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Central Square Theater, presenting Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. The mysterious Mrs. Warren built a global empire. Her daughter is shocked to learn how. Now through June 22nd. CentralSquareTheater.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Juliet Kayyem sitting in for Marjorie. I am Jim Browdy, and it's time for Two More Things, and we're first going to hear Juliet's One More Thing. Take it away, Juliet.
I am so glad to be here because 2 hours speaking, I at least get 2 minutes just to riff off on something that didn't make our list.
I'm very excited.
So I woke up this morning to learn that Donald Trump may have fibbed about this big airplane that he's getting from Qatar.
How?
Apparently, unlike he told us a little bit ago where they offered it and it's a gift and it's free, and how can you give up a gift that's free? And that's what Democrats do. It turns out the Trump administration, possibly Trump himself, called Qatar and said, we heard you're trying to get rid of a really can I say crappy?
Yes,
crappy. It's crappy, everyone. It's already been reviewed. Everyone knows they've been trying to get rid of it. And the Department of Defense is basically, in defense speak, saying that it's crappy. The Qatar wants assurances now from Donald Trump that, one, he asked for it. I think that they want to put him on the record saying that he wanted the plane, lest anything happen with the plane. They don't want to be responsible. And number two, that they have no more obligation to retrofit or bring the plane up from crappy status. So that is my 2 minutes plus some, but I have to, or two more things, but I have to say this story is so wackadoodle on so many levels, but the very fact that from the beginning it was a lie, that actually Trump wanted this airplane, and now Qatar is saying, no, you asked us for it. I think this thing is not, in the end, this thing is not going to happen.
He can't even grift effectively.
I know,
well,
and especially because Qatar like really will bend over backwards for Trump. So this must be a big deal.
Okay, my turn. It's going to be a different kind of thing. This is something that Marjorie and I and our whole team are really excited about. Starting Monday, please tell your friends in Western Massachusetts that from 11 to noon, this show will be broadcast on 88.5 FM. we taped an interview with two of the wonderful hosts on the station, Khalees Smith and Monty Belmonte, who host the Fabulous 413. It's going to air tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And they did remind me, this is unfortunate, that I once said publicly that the thing most people remember about Springfield were the strip clubs. And I was kidding, sort of. And they made the point, it was very important. There's only one strip club left nearby. It's in Watley. It's called the Watley Ballet. But despite that faux pas on my part, we are wildly excited about Monday and beyond. Please tell your friends in the western part of the state, also across the border into Connecticut and into New York State, that BPR will be on the air on 88.5 every day, Monday to Friday from 11 to noon, starting Monday, June 2nd. We thank the people out there, and we are thrilled.
So exciting, especially the fact that you just said that a strip club had the name ballet in it.
Exactly.
That is all the time we have. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, retired federal judge Nancy Gertner joins us. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com, GBH News.
Join GBH at our Brighton studios for Stories from the Stage. You'll hear entertaining, inspirational stories while you enjoy drinks with friends. Join our studio audience at one of our upcoming shows. Tickets and more info at gbh.org/events.
Support for GBH comes from you and North Shore Music Theater, presenting the Broadway musical Waitress, with new music by singer-songwriter Sarah Bareilles. On stage at Bill Henney's North Shore Music Theater from June 3rd through June 15th. Ticket information at nsmt.org. And MIT Sloan Executive Education. You can advance your career with 2 to 3 day courses designed for professionals. Topics include leadership, innovation, and strategic management. Learn more at executive.mit.edu.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on hour 3 of BPR. The courts stand up to Trump again, blocking his sweeping, confusing tariffs, calling them illegal. Will higher courts stand up to Trump on tariffs too? We'll talk it all through with former federal judge Nancy Gertner.
And I'm Juliette Kayyem in for Marjorie Egan. Jim, Marjorie's people lobbied hard to keep the Am I the A-hole segment on the show today, and they won. Today's scenario, where's the line when it comes to asking guests to conform to a dress code for fancy events? Is one woman in the wrong for asking her son's partner to get rid of facial piercings for a family wedding? We have our thoughts. Weigh in next on the third hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A federal court is blocking the Trump administration's bid to bar Harvard University from enrolling international students. Lawyers for both sides went to court today in Boston. The dispute over foreign student enrollment was the latest in Harvard's defiance of President Trump's directives that have also led to sweeping funding cuts to Harvard and other research institutions across the U.S. Elon Musk is leaving the White House after overseeing the president's Department of Government Efficiency. NPR's Bobby Allen says Musk departs after DOJ dismantled government agencies and laid off tens of thousands of federal workers.
Musk thanked President Trump on X for allowing him to reduce wasteful spending as part of the Department of Government Efficiency that he led. The billionaire framed his exit as a natural end of his time as a special government employee, which are allowed to serve for 130 days, a number Musk hits on Friday. But there is more to the story. Musk has spent weeks clashing with cabinet members and advisors in the White House over tariff policy, high-profile appointments, and Republicans' Big Beautiful Bill, which Musk says undermines DOJ's spending cuts. Musk's time in government led to thousands of layoffs, agencies being gutted, and about 20 lawsuits challenging Musk's authority. Now Musk says he will put his focus back on SpaceX and Tesla. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
The U.S. is offering a new proposal for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza. Here's NPR's Daniel Estrin.
President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff said the U.S. is presenting a new proposal. An Israeli source briefed on it, but not authorized to speak publicly, tells NPR the U.S. is suggesting a 60-day ceasefire with the release of 10 living Israeli hostages and 18 bodies of those who died or were killed in captivity. Israel did not immediately comment on the proposal. Hamas says it received Witkoff's proposal and is studying it. Hamas has said it's willing to release 10 hostages, but wants international mediators to guarantee there would be talks on ending the war. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A federal court says President Trump cannot use an emergency powers law to enact sweeping tariffs on U.S. imports. The British government's reacting cautiously to the ruling from the Court of International Trade in New York. Here's Villa Marks.
Britain says the U.S. Trade Court's rulings on tariffs were, quote, matters for the United States to determine domestically. The statement went on to note that, quote, this is only the first stage of legal proceedings. The court decision, although already under appeal, severely undercuts the president's trade negotiating strategy that relies on the threat of sweeping tariffs on goods from dozens of countries. Britain struck the first provisional agreement with the US to reduce those tariffs, and its leaders have talked up this negotiating success. The government statement said the UK was, quote, working to ensure that businesses can benefit from that deal as quickly as possible. For NPR News, I'm Willem Marks in London.
U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour. The Nasdaq is up 120 points. It's NPR News.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. A federal judge in Boston has granted Harvard a temporary injunction against the Trump administration's attempt to ban the university from admitting international students. The judge said she'll order the Trump administration not to make any changes to Harvard's visa program, while the school appeals the Department of Homeland Security's notice of alleged violations. President Trump called Harvard, quote, very anti-Semitic earlier this week when he threatened to divert $3 billion in funding for the university to trade schools. The university denies that accusation. And attorneys for Harvard said before today's ruling that a successful ban on international students would cost the school about 25% of the student body. The Cambridge-based pharmaceutical company Moderna is losing a $600 million federal grant to develop new flu vaccines. In a statement to Stat News, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services said there were significant safety concerns with messenger RNA technology. And that's the technology that Moderna helped pioneer to quickly create a COVID vaccine. Dr. Daniel Kuritzkis is chief of infectious disease at Brigham and Women's Hospital. He says hundreds of millions of people have received mRNA vaccines, and he has no concerns about their safety.
This is a technology that has been in development for well over a decade. Everything we know about these vaccines is that they are extraordinarily safe, and there's nothing about the fact that it's an RNA delivery vehicle as opposed to a different vehicle.
Kuritzkis says no other technology offers the speed that mRNA does in rapidly developing new vaccines. In sports, the Sox get a day off. Cloudy, cooler, highs only in the 60s this afternoon, 64 in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Welcome to Hour 3 of BPR. I'm Jim Browdy. Marjorie has the day off. Filling in for her is Harvard Kennedy School's Juliette Kayyem. Hi, Juliette.
I'm so glad to be here.
One more hour.
Oh, my gosh. Nap time, 2:24 p.m. I will be napping.
Oh, 2:24. That's right.
I am so impressed by the team here and by you, Jim. Every day you deliver.
You're very kind. We're streaming youtube.com/GBH News. And by the way, Marjorie and I are both off tomorrow, but Andrea Cabral and Shirley Young will be filling in for us at the library. Live Music Friday will be with Grammy-nominated violinist Christina Day Martinson and a lot more. For the latest iteration of On the Docket, we're joined on Zoom by retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. Judge Gertner is a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. Good afternoon, Judge Gertner.
Good afternoon, Jim and Marjorie and Julie.
Oh, and Juliette. You can call me Julie.
Whoever
you can call me
is.
Marjorie.
No,
I will be anything, and I will call you Judge because, as you know, I like judges. I do like judges, and it is so great to see you here. And thank you for being here. I feel like On the Docket is going to apply to almost every headline we're getting, and we've gotten a couple since we've been on air. But let's start with this court that exist, this U.S. Court of International Trade. What are they and what did they do? I think most Americans had no idea there was this specialized court.
Right. I think that I don't think that anyone had any idea, and we didn't even know that this case was coming up the line. It is a court of of numbers of judges who deal with international trade issues. Their decision, though, in one sense, mirrors what we're hearing from judges all across the country, which is trumped up an emergency. You like the phrasing, trumped up an emergency to justify his assigning tariffs when that is Congress's job. At one point during the course of the oral argument, the government was talking about how fabulous the tariffs were, mirroring Trump's own argument. One of the judges, who in fact was appointed by Reagan, was very funny. He said, "It may be a dandy plan, but it happens not to be lawful." So I now want to say that the tariff plan is now a dandy plan. But I think it was the same rubric that you saw with the deportations to El Salvador and the deportations to South Sudan, which is a manufactured emergency, which then justified presidential powers more than anyone has ever seen before.
Yeah, I noticed that they responded back to the idea that the deficit in and of itself is an emergency, therefore justifying the tariffs. One of the judges wrote, we've had a deficit for lots and lots of times. You can't break up on 49 straight years. You cannot now claim that this is the emergency that would justify taking unauthorized power and moving forward with these tariffs.
It really raises a question that we've talked about on this show before. Much of what Trump has done, he could have done lawfully.
Yeah.
He has the Congress in his hand. So he could have proposed these tariffs lawfully. And so what is it that he basically wishes to simply show, show his muscles and show his thuggery rather than going for the usual procedures?
By the way, as sycophantic as the Republicans are, Judge Gertner, I'm not sure he could have gotten a majority of Republicans, considering this is such a direct tax on their constituents. It's one thing to be silent in the face of his executive order, but I think one of the reasons he did it that way is because he didn't know if he could do it. And I want to pick up on something you said. You mentioned a Reagan appointee to that court. For those who assume that the other two are two leftist judges, one was appointed by Donald Trump. The third was of the three judges in this case, one point picked by Obama. I have to say, I'd never heard of this court till yesterday, but it appears to me, this is a question, not a statement, Judge Gertner, this court has the same standing as, for example, a federal district court in D.C. today said the same thing, that Trump's emergency tariffs were illegal. Does it have the same standing in the appellate process as the same thing?
No, it goes to the federal circuit, which is the court. Which is not the D.C. circuit, not the First Circuit. It goes to a court that typically deals, I think, with money matters. I was once reversed when I ordered funding for an abortion for a woman, and the appeal from my decision was to the Federal Circuit, not to the First Circuit, because it involved the federal fisc. It involved the federal monies, and that's where it went afterwards. And that's where he says he's going to go. And then after that, he'll go to the Supreme Court. But I take your point that Congress may not have done this, but the pattern in the Harvard case, in the deportation cases, is all the same. He has the Congress, and oftentimes he's acting in an area in which he has maximum authority, and has chosen to do it in a way that is bombastic and in a way that is likely to be overturned.
Yeah. We were talking earlier that I think that's why he is having so much fun in his mind with the pardons, is that's actually I was calling it a flex, that he has that no one can push back on him. All these other things he's getting pushback from the international community, from other countries, from the courts. But it does raise an issue that, because it looks like we're just looking at the headlines that they're already going to be, DOJ is already going to be appealing this tariff decision. We talked a lot of us were circulating on Monday, Donald Trump's very very odd. And I think it's fair to talk about his mental competency at this stage. Memorial Day message in which he basically barely talks about what Memorial Day is actually about the defense of our democracy by our service members, but begins with calling Biden and his administration the scum. But like lodged somewhere in this verbal mess of a tweet or a statement that he has, he does go after judges again. He does go specifically to them. And it does seem, that's a constant theme. But in this big, beautiful bill that is heading to the Senate, and we heard Chuck Todd earlier in the show say that he thought the Senate wasn't going to tinker with it much. It looks like that the big, beautiful bill will at least protect DOJ attorneys from contempt proceedings, meaning that they can defy these court rulings without any punishment. Is that how that would actually unfold?
I think that the provision is unclear. What you're referring to is a provision that said that the courts can't use appropriated funds. First of all, they can't use appropriated funds to enforce court orders, contempt orders, rather. No, court orders, I think it said. Then at the same time, it also said that a bond is necessary. Posting a bond is necessary in any case in which the plaintiff seeks a preliminary injunction or a temporary restraining order. It's not clear where that's going to go. I think experts have differed. With respect to the bond, judge can make it $1. Let's see what it has to be. Make it $1. I also don't see how they possibly enforce the appropriated funds part. The Marshal Service gets a chunk of money for its activities, and how are you possibly going to disentangle what is enforcing this, this order versus what isn't? I don't think that that's possible. So I think this is really a performative provision more than anything else. The one area that it could affect is at one point, Judge Boasberg, who was dealing with deportations to El Salvador and now has a contempt proceeding. This is the case where the judge believed that the plane should turn around because it was under his order. If he wants to impose contempt, criminal contempt, on the officials who made representations in his court, that's something for the DOJ to decide. So there would be essentially pressure on him to make it a special prosecutor rather than the DOJ, because he has no confidence. Right. I would have no confidence in DOJ actually following through on this. So special prosecutor may have a special funding line. So it could affect the appointment of a special prosecutor, but we really don't know. My initial impression, though, that this was really performative.
Yeah. Is that position shared by a lot of your colleagues and former colleagues?
People are all over the map. But I don't understand how you could possibly separate out the funds for the enforcement of contempt from the funds that go to the marshals for all the other proceedings. I don't know how you could do that. Except the case of a special counsel, because that, I believe, would be a special appropriation.
We're talking to former federal judge Nancy Gertner. A second ago, Juliette Kayyem, in passing, referenced this post that Trump put up on Memorial Day that was as classless and grotesque as Trump can be. The beginning is Happy Memorial Day to all, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country. And then when he's ranting against people who came into the country illegally, he obviously can't stop there. Through an open border that only an incompetent president, he means Biden, would approve, and through judges who are on a mission to keep murderers, drug dealers, rapists, gang members, and release prisoners from all over the world in our country so they can rob, murder, and rape again, all protected by these USA-hating judges. I know we've had this discussion with you many a time. You were a former federal judge. I think people know that Juliette is married to an appellate federal court judge. It seems to me this is a call for violence on the a la January 6th. This is the most powerful man in the world saying to his troops around the country, these people, these judges protect rapists and murderers in your community, and then finish this. Just like, what was his right hand, his consigliary's name, who went to jail and then testified against him?
Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen, who said he never had to say to you, go do something explicitly. He laid the foundation, and then everybody knew what he wanted you to do. This is unimaginably scary to me, and I don't do what her husband or you used to do for a living. Judge, what's your reaction?
It's interesting. I feel like I want someone to put on a board what he said before January 6th, what he's saying now.
Yeah.
What he said on January 6th was, that essentially they're taking our country away from us, and you should do something or you're not going to have a country anymore. This, it seems to me, is an analogous statement.
I agree with that.
January 6th, it led to the essentially the assault on the Capitol. What is this going to lead to? But I think it's not only Trump. I mean, he's also enabled a discourse about judges among congressmen, among reporters that we've never heard before.
Yeah.
But again, your point about the Court of International Trade was right. It was 2 Republicans and a Democrat. Right. 1 Republican had been appointed by Trump. Even in the injunctions against Trump, the pattern, including a judge in Texas, the pattern has been, it doesn't matter who appointed you, Republican, Democrat, which Republican, it does not matter. The rulings have been consistently against the president. And why? Because what he's doing is so flagrantly illegal that you only have to be alive in order to know that that's. That's I think
get the classified information case and be a new district judge in Florida. But with that case, she actually stands out as such an outlier because as you're saying that most of the courts are consistently pushing back, and you do have to ask yourself, sort of outside the law, like. I think as Elon Musk exits Doge, I think there are over 100 cases involving Doge and its authority. And that, to me, that has nothing to do with are the courts right or what do they realize? You have to have a pretty bad public policy that in only 100 plus days of existence, you have almost as many number of legal cases. That's just a sign of just a carelessness or a disregard for even the basic functioning of government at this stage, regardless of what the legal case is or regardless of who the judges are. That's hard to do.
It's a measure of what they have tried to do rather than who the judges are. And with respect to Doge, there was numbers of presidents have tried to reconstitute the government, to try to reorganize agencies. Again, that could have been done with a willing Congress to reconstitute the agencies. There's no question about that. But then there are rules with respect to the president and how the president is supposed to do that, if at all. So no, it's a function of the way he's gone about this, as opposed to who the judges are. But the scary thing is that what he's done is, rather than take responsibility for his own ineptitude and those of the people around him, he is deflecting criticism on the judges. And so if this fails, it is because of the judges. It's not because I did it the wrong way. It's not because there was no preparation. It is because of the judges. And that's very dangerous. And it's also not true.
Right.
Judge Gerg, you and we have had this discussion. We just had it with former Ambassador Nicholas Burns a few minutes ago. These Harvard's challenge to the Trump administration banning international students. My concern is that even if the courts continue to do the right thing, that the damage in great part will have been done based upon our interviews with some international students in Harvard and what we've read. But putting aside this thesis that obviously is unprovable until it happens, is a federal judge in Boston today continued to block Trump's attempt to ban international students at Harvard. How solid is the legal ground of Harvard's challenge on this internet? Forget my political analysis, the legal analysis.
I think it is very, very solid.
You do?
I think it is very solid. Mick, I have on my screen now what's part of Harvard's papers. So if the rationale for this, let's sort of take it one by one. If the rationale for these actions taking the funding action and even the international student actions was because Harvard did something wrong under the regulations. With the funding, there's this aroma of, the anti-Semitism with respect to the students, that it didn't follow the rules with respect to students. That is quintessentially wrong.
Yeah.
With respect to international students, Harvard had to certify that they were properly enrolled, that they were going to classes, that they got a degree or on their way to getting a degree. Nothing more. Trump was demanding information about their political activities, turning a university into Big Brother. Were they engaged in this activity or that? That is information they actually have no legal obligation to turn over, and that they don't have. And where a university is going to start to do that, essentially it would change the nature of the university. With the funding issue, it went from anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
So Title VI of the law says that you can't discriminate against categories of individuals. And there is a process for bringing those charges. There's a notice of the charge, there's a hearing, etc. He bypassed that. And by the time he finished excoriating Harvard, it was clear that the anti-Semitism was a fig leaf. He says Harvard is hiring woke, radical left idiots who are only capable of teaching failure. It's not a decent place of learning. In other words, as time has gone on, it's clear he wants to take Harvard down.
Yeah, and
it's not even close to legitimate, and clearly a First Amendment issue, clearly a due process issue.
And he's
again,
so undisciplined. He's so undisciplined as a personality, as a person, that he can't even hide that that's his desire, because it's the tweets and it's the public comments that are becoming exhibits A, B, C through Z for Harvard to say this is content. This is about content, not about conduct. Conduct, as Judge Gertner was saying. Yeah, if someone was embezzling at Harvard, if someone was embezzling the funds, of course the government could say this is not the proper use. And so, but he is going to end up being his own worst witness. I will say, sort of outside the law stuff, yesterday you did start to hear a little bit of cracking in maybe what the White House realizes that they can win in this. I think there's two reasons. So you heard them say 15%. We're going to come back to Harvard and say, we only want your students, 15% of your students to be international students. Okay, so that seems to me to be a bit of a concession. CNN is reporting right now that now the Trump administration is saying, well, why don't you guys think through 30 days and we'll figure this out. So that's part of that, is they know, as Judge Gertner is saying, that the law is not on their side. But more importantly, this attack on foreign students harms state schools, state colleges, rural and other areas that are red states, where the mayors and governors are likely calling the White House and saying, you know what, we're going to be hurt too. And so they always think that everything is just like, blue states, but this an attack on international students is going to hurt a lot of state.
Well, and you've seen that with respect to the funding. The University of Alabama.
Yes, Florida.
Don't count us in.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. But what's significant to me, Juliet, is that that hasn't actually affected him.
Yeah.
The defunding the University of Alabama and major institutions hurts blue states. But I'm working on an op-ed right now, which I will give you a sense of. And with respect to the international students, who are the international students that we know about? So, for example, Benjamin Netanyahu earned a Bachelor of Science in Architecture from MIT, took political science courses at Harvard. Ellen Sirleaf, who became the first female head of state in Africa, got a Master's of Public Administration at the Kennedy School. Mark Carney, the current Prime Minister of Canada, earned a BA in economics from Harvard, and it goes on. Not just the rest of the world that has taken advantage of Harvard and other fine institutions teaching, and that helps us.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was visiting a student of mine from India who graduated about 3 years ago, sitting at a sidewalk cafe in Harvard Square. And it was like an international bazaar.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary. People in their caps and gowns of all colors and all languages marching back and forth, so proud to be part of Harvard. And what I have heard, which my student reflected, she's going to get a PhD now at Oxford.
Yes.
He has engineered a brain drain, which has
Yeah.
never existed in our country, which is extraordinary. So the consequences are not just to
Yeah.
Harvard and other institutions. The consequences are to the United States.
Yeah.
But speaking of the way he talks, Juliet, why is no one talking about his mental state?
I agree. I've always been careful as someone who, like you, Judge Gertner, you're on TV, whatever. I just like to stick to my lane. But at some stage, like this is this is all lanes and even Chuck Todd earlier in this show was saying, actually, I was sort of surprised that Chuck Todd opened with this. He said, are we going to start talking about Trump's mental deterioration? He's just not able to pick up on cues in the way he did. We're all focused on Biden, of course, because of the books and the allegations of a cover-up. But I think you're right. I think when people like you and me are willing to sort of say it more publicly, we like to stick to our lanes. That it's you can't ignore it anymore.
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think that the what you said. I mean, he's always been motor mouth.
Yeah.
But this is really beyond all of that. And as I say, undoing, even if he has a kernel of legitimacy in what he's doing, which I actually, with respect to Harvard, I don't think he has, essentially most of the case against him is made by the words out of his mouth.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. He's his own worst enemy.
Judge Gertner, as always.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much. We've been speaking with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. Thank you so much. Coming up after a quick break, a typical Thursday BPR transition from the highest court in the land to am I the a-hole? I got to be careful when I say that. This week's prompt, a mother is considering whether to ask her son to ask his partner to remove their face piercings for an upcoming wedding. This mother of three has opinions. Who's a bigger a-hole? Weigh in next. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When Israeli author Etgar Keret read his manuscript on October 6th, 2023, he was worried it was too dark. But when he came back to the collection of short stories months later, his country now plunged into a brutal war.
Suddenly I understood what it was about. It was how to stay human in human times.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. That conversation on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Polar Beverages, family made since 1882, founded in Worcester, Massachusetts by Dennis Crowley, offering a range of sparkling seltzers, mixers, and dry sodas. Product information and locations at polarbeverages.com.
And Central Square Theater, presenting Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. The mysterious Mrs. Warren built a global empire. Her daughter is shocked to learn how. Now through June 22nd. CentralSquareTheater.org.
Welcome back to BPR. I'm Jim Browdy. Juliet Kayyem is sitting in for Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Marjorie and I both are off tomorrow. Andrea Cabral and Shirley Young from the Globe will be hosting a fabulous show, actually, great rundown at the Boston Public Library. And by the way, if you're keeping time, as I know a lot of you are, it's only 53 minutes till Juliet's nap. So
I know.
We'll keep a clock on.
It is torture, like, this is amazing.
Torture.
I'm having the time of my life. Thank you all to the team for prepping me. This is the last half hour. I made it. I've been standing.
You haven't made it.
I've been standing the whole time and jumping and keeping the energy up.
Here we go. Right now, before her nap, it's time for our usual Thursday afternoon, low rent but wildly popular segment, Am I the A-hole? This week's scenario comes via an advice column in the Washington Post, so it's sort of legit. Carolyn Hacks writes the thing. A mother writes to say she's concerned about some facial piercings worn by her son's partner. They're called angel bites, these little things, usually in your lip, symmetrically both sides, but go Google it. There are two little studs that pierce her upper lip in the case of this partner, and we have some examples. We do on the YouTube stream. Apparently, we do. The main issue the mother claims to have: there's a family wedding coming up, and she wants to ask her son to ask his partner to take the piercings out for the occasion. You with me so far? Good. 877-301-8970. Assuming she does ask her son to do this, would this mother be the a-hole? On one hand, it's a wedding. Maybe there's a case to be made trying to get everybody looking, their crispest, sharpest for these photos. But on the other hand, who cares? If this is how his partner wants to present herself and he's happy with her, who else's business is it? And a side debate we're having this morning, how do you feel about these boyfriends and girlfriends making it into the family wedding photos anyway, since they could be gone in a minute?
It's ridiculous.
But of course, on that note, the wife could be gone or the husband could be gone.
Yeah,
in a minute
but you
too.
know what? I mean,
Okay,
people will be shocked. I have opinions about this.
877-301-8970. So the question is, who is the a-hole? Is the a-hole the mother who wants her son's partner to take out these piercings, or would the a-hole be the son or the partner if they say this is who we are and how we are, and we're staying with it? Who's the a-hole?
So this is I'm just going to be so careful because people are going to say mean things. Okay, so this is, look, when you're a partner of someone entering a family unit, my general sense is you just want to buy some goodwill, right? And so I would present it, if I were this mother, because I agree with her, as there's this family thing. I don't want this to be a part of the conversation. I would really appreciate if she or he, we don't know if the partner's here, would either take some of them off as a woman. Take some of these off because of the sort of larger issue that this shouldn't become the family focus. It's not her family. It's not. And I know that people are going to get mad at me and
I'm mad at you.
I know. Can I just say one thing? Here's the other thing is,
go ahead, say it.
Is why are these people in the family pictures? I guess that's my start.
No, that's like a distraction.
Is that an out?
It's
okay, I do.
So
feel
your
like
position is the partner who has these piercings should take them out.
Everyone's going to hate me.
Well, not everyone. Not everyone.
No, my kids will. My kids will.
Okay.
And also, I know that people say it's superficial, and it is superficial.
You talk as much as I do. What is your
know, because I already know that I am the a-hole, so I'm just trying to defend myself.
That's another possibility. Go ahead.
I'm trying to defend myself.
Keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
But there's some things that aren't that can be viewed as superficial, but that may be justified, and I'm just saying that.
Well, there's some things.
I'm sorry, everyone.
By the way, let's be clear here. The son is fairly happy, apparently, with his partner. His partner looks like she wants to look. End of discussion. If the mother isn't happy, get over it. That's the way. By the way, I know this will shock you. Most of my colleagues go out of their way to say on the air and off that I am not the best dresser. So if I was invited to an event, should someone say to me, well, unless you clean up your act, you can't come to the event? What's the answer to that? Thank you.
Well, what's the event?
Well, let's assume it's a wedding.
But
I'll do my best.
Why is it?
I'll dress my best.
Yes.
I'll dress my best. But unless I meet the standard, if my mother was still around, of how I should look, I should be barred. This is ridiculous. The bottom line is she may not like what it is. Close your pie hole. Deal with it. And
look,
your son is happy.
Her son may be might be very upset with her.
He's a fabulous kid.
Is he?
He's a wonderful kid. 877-301.
Can we get to the second topic that I have strong feelings about?
No, about them being in the picture at all?
Yeah, come
it's
on,
ridiculous.
People. It's ridiculous.
No,
We're
your
agree
position
on
is ridiculous.
Why is my
the divorce rate is 50% in the country?
I don't care.
So don't take any pictures because the spouses are not going to be there.
Can we have a rule about the number of years in the relationship? Does that mean anything? Or like someone just said, I met the love of my life 4 months ago. She's going to come into my brother's wedding pictures. So she could be in the picture if she's been
there 4 years.
How many months?
How many years? I'm asking you.
I say at least one.
At least 1 year.
At least 1 year.
Okay, fine.
Then you make the family pictures. Because how many of us have these pictures of these big events and there's random Bill standing right there. And people were like, who was that guy? And he was like, oh, that was my niece's boyfriend. Like, I don't know.
Let's read, before we get to the calls.
I can't
Sue's
even
from
look.
Cranston. No, she's not trashing you, even though she should. She says that it's clearly the mother is the a-hole. The 50th anniversary photos of my family include my adolescent son's bright blue. The photo being himself. He is now a short-haired owner of a multi-million-dollar business. Amen, Suze.
Okay, Suze, that is the son. That is you. I mean, that is, in other words, this is bringing someone to the event. And the question is do they get the same equities as a child? I think that's fair to ask.
Well, it's fair to ask.
Thank
it's the
you.
wrong answer.
I
Okay,
know.
let's go to Laura in a car. Who's the a-hole,
This
Laura?
is
Welcome to the show.
My conventional self comes
Go
out.
ahead. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Long-time listener, not first-time caller.
Well, great.
Hello.
Great.
Hello to
Hello.
That mama is 100% the asshole.
We say a-hole.
Sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead. Continue. It's okay.
I apologize.
That's okay.
I just feel like she needs to sort of investigate why she's asking that. It's a selfish thing to ask. Those photos are going to be around forever, sure, but the best case scenario, it's going to be a good story down the line. She could tell it to all her friends.
Exactly.
She can be as disgruntled as she wants, but that's not for them. It's not for her. It's for the people getting married. It's for the people holding the celebration.
Brilliant
And she
call.
just needs to back off. I think she needs to take a deep look at why she's asking to do that, and I'm sure that it bleeds into other aspects of things too. So maybe it's just a chance for her to reflect.
That was brilliant, Laura.
I'm sorry for being this, and also, I mean, all of us come to this with our backgrounds and everything. I see these young people with tattoos.
God.
Oh,
What are you,
shut
like
up!
100 years
I
old?
am with tattoos. No, it's like I see these young girls with like tattoos and piercings. I'm like, I'm 55
Zoe,
years
how do you
old.
feel about
Listen,
these young people with
55
tattoos,
years
Zoe?
old. 55 years old.
Go
No,
ahead.
thank you. 55 years old, and it's like you like your skin.
This is really bad news
Your
for
skin. It's okay.
Sam and
I know.
Juliet.
I'm totally into that. Your skin.
Oh, I have breaking news.
and
I have breaking news.
What?
Breaking news. Juliet's first book was called Security Mom. We're now going to rename it Insecurity Mom, because that's
Listen,
who you are.
I don't have any tattoos, and I also don't have any piercings. I don't have pierced
I
ears.
don't think I
lip.
asked if you remember correctly.
I know, but I'm
Thank
just
you.
saying, you guys, I'm
Oh
just
my
going to hold on
God.
to this a-hole thing for like the next half hour.
Luke in Providence, you were next
So is
on.
anyone on my side?
Maybe
is
they are. We'll
anyone?
find. Luke from Providence, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi. A long-time listener, first-time caller.
We love that. Thank you.
I'm going to go with the mom. I'm thinking that the mom is not an a-hole because to me, again, it's a respect. It's a respect of customs. It's a tradition. And, we all have to make compromises sooner or later in life. And I know it's a hard word these days, compromise. But for a little thing like that, I don't know. To me, I think, it's something that's, this tradition. There's, again, it depends if it's in a church, I mean, if you're doing it in your backyard, it's
Luke,
a lot
Luke,
for me.
where does it? It's a slippery. Where does it stop? Okay, so the lack of respect, according to you and apparently to Juliet here, based upon the piercings. How about if the partner gets rid of the piercings but comes to the wedding and her dress is too short? Should the mother say that's really not respectful to have your dress 4 inches above the knee? It can only be 2 inches above the knee.
I think a dress and fashion is a little bit different than piercings.
All right. Okay.
I just want
Well, you made Juliet's day,
No,
Luke.
I'm not saying I'm right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We
No,
appreciate
I'm
the
not
call.
saying. Look, it's a
You are saying
wedding.
you're right.
It's a wedding, and if the mother said to the son's, to the son, like, I love her legs. I love seeing her legs. I love that she wears these mini skirts. But this is my family wedding at a church. What is so wrong with saying it's more conservative? Like, don't wear a mini skirt that when she sits, we're going to see her tattoo on her upper thigh.
By the way, Juliet, we were
the
going to
part of me
save
that
this
what
to
is
the
this?
end of the show.
Oh,
but
no.
Juliet was asked if I could invite all of you to her 85th birthday party, which will be next week. And so we'll at the end of the show we'll give you a dress.
I will say we had a birthday
old
party
lady.
for my mother, and there is a person in there.
Who?
One of her grandchildren's.
Yeah.
boyfriends who I think had been around for a little bit. He's
What
like now
happened
long
then?
gone, but his picture lives on.
What did he do wrong? What happened to him?
He was just in all the pictures for the thing.
Well, that happens.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
This is really quite sad.
Did
actually.
I build goodwill for
No, you were
2.5 hours?
I was just going to say that.
And now it's all going away for the last half hour. Next time, if I'm ever allowed
here's
back
an
on,
anonymous texter.
he's going to be the a-hole.
Granny Juliet needs
Thank
to
you.
loosen up.
I
Thank
know.
you. Maureen
I know.
in
I'm
Dover.
telling you, people.
Maureen in Dover, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Who's the a-hole, Maureen?
Me.
You.
Sorry, Juliet.
It's okay.
I think the mom is being.
I know.
Go ahead.
I
Why?
know.
Why?
That's why we chose this. Is that I get to be it.
Why?
Well, I'm also a mom, and I'm also a therapist. So I would say, I think the mom just needs to let this go.
Okay.
It's not about.
I'm
what
going to
she
change my
wants.
mind.
It's about the bride and the groom. She might not like these. I just looked them up, and they are kind of grotesque looking. But she might not like them. But it's really none of her business.
Okay.
So
you're a therapist? I'm sitting down now. I think you're in your car. I've been standing the whole time. I'm going to sit down now. Therapize me. Like, is this just like me being just totally irrational? Like, I just feel like it's her family's wedding. And this person is not her son. It's not her daughter.
Well, let her therapize you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I can't even do that.
Go ahead, Maureen.
I don't know. There's something about tattoos and piercings that bothers you.
That's funny. You know what? They don't bother me. They don't bother me mostly. But I do think that's so funny you say that. I do think these do bother me. I'm sure it's something about skin and me, like, whatever. I like tattoos.
Yeah, and also
I don't have
it's
any,
on
but
your face.
We heard that. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you could have like 10 earrings in, and that probably wouldn't bother you as much as these fang things in your lips. Yeah.
Maureen, are you available?
Or that
are
a
you
tattoo-
available to see Juliet face to face?
I live in Cambridge. No, but like a tattoo on someone's arm, a tattoo, whatever. But I do. I'm willing. A tattoo on the face. I do still.
Jelly
I still
roll
have,
will not be at your kid's wedding.
I am being totally honest. I'm in a therapy session. Everyone be quiet.
Okay.
me and my new
You ever heard the
therapist.
expression, you're digging a deeper hole for yourself as we go? Okay, Maureen, that was excellent. She'll be calling you in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
877
I appreciate it.
301-8970. By the way, in fairness to Julie, this may be an impossible task. We generally take calls in order, but if there's anybody who embraces the absurd idea that Juliet is advanced in that one caller, we'll put them to the top of the list, to be fair.
But I am in therapy now, so I'll change my mind by next
apparently
time.
in Melrose, unfortunately, wherever that is. No, not Melrose, wherever she was from. Stephen is in Melrose, and you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Stephen. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for taking the call.
Of course.
I'm now in Saugus.
Oh, excellent. That's fabulous. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the son should ask his mother if his girlfriend embarrasses her.
Oof, I like that.
Which would put the mother on the spot.
Okay. I don't know how to answer
And why,
that.
why
I've taken on
to
this
what
role.
end? Go ahead.
Well, so the mother says, yes, your girlfriend embarrasses me, and that's a problem for their relationship. Or she says, no, she doesn't embarrass me, which means that let her go as she wishes.
Well, it's also, I thought where you were going, Stephen, I think it's a very good point. It's also a reflection on her son. You're basically saying you didn't choose well, son, because your partner is somebody who I find, as she looks, to be unacceptable at this wedding. So it's not only a reflection on the partner, it's a reflection on her own kid. And that was an excellent thing there, Stephen. Thank you for the
Thank
call.
you,
We appreciate
Stephen.
it. Yes. Okay, fine.
I'm in desperate search of someone.
anybody who
Someone
sports
said I
with
did
it?
a great job today, but clearly I am the a-hole. I'll take it. I'll take it. Goodwill for 2.5 hours. I lose it all in the last 25 minutes. Love it.
Here is Andrew in Watertown. Are you with Juliet? We're feeling bad for her now. Are you or no?
Ooh.
Andrew.
I am not.
That's okay.
My gut tells me the mother's the a-hole. However, I did want to add, a couple of years ago,
Please.
I faced a similar situation with my wife when I were getting married.
Yeah.
Basically had a couple of groomsmen who didn't have long-term relationships, had one who had gauge earrings or kind of large piercings. And all I said to each of them was, look, there are going to be photos from this event on my wall, on a coffee table book for the rest of my life. And if you want to bring this date or have that hairdo, that's up to you.
That's
but I
awesome.
want you to think, long and hard. and, you know, it was effective.
What does that mean? Effective how, Aaron?
They shaved. Yeah.
So one out of the three brought a date. They're still together and engaged today.
It's like he knew.
It's like he knew, and one groomsman decided to take out the potentially controversial earrings, and this wasn't at a church. This was at an aquarium.
Well, there you go. Hey, Andrew, thank you kindly from Watertown.
The contextual
sharing.
aspects of it are helpful to hear, but
They
you were a much greater adult than I was. Then maybe than this mother is. I am just saying, I don't think she's crazy to have asked about this, right? And I don't know the nature of the relationship if this woman's this partner or this woman's going to be around a long time. I think Pam in Concord has the best answer, which is anything questionable, put that guest at the back on the end side of all family photos so that they can be easily cropped out.
Ridiculous. By the way, colleagues, it seems our screens are about to die.
Yeah.
And that's where the coals are. So if somebody could do whatever they got to do.
We are breaking the internet with this one.
No, you are breaking the internet. Shanna, I hope I pronounced that right.
I was just being honest.
In Providence, you're on the, whatever this is, BPR. Hi, Shanna. Welcome to the show. Hi.
This is my fourth time calling. I called about fluff before. I called about the days. This is like all earth-shattering stuff. But I have to tell you,
yes.
I am exactly Julia's age. I have so many friends with tattoos and piercings, and I have two myself. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
They're in areas where I can cover at any given moment. So depending on where you are, I was raised in a house where it's like, you know, they're artists, but then there was a time and place for certain things. And I think, to speak to her point, is like, when you're raised in a house and like your sense of decorum or what's appropriate for places and spaces, it's not a criticism or a judgment of this person. It's just like, this is, and I think we forget that a lot of times moms are my daughter's getting married in Greece in July. And moms are so heavily invested in these life events. And if it's said with kindness and the person genuinely likes you, like my son-in-law genuinely likes me, we can drive each other crazy. But I think if it's done in kindness, I think there's a place and space to meet each other in that place for that moment.
Shanna, you sound totally rational, other than the fact that you agree with Juliet.
No, I do. I think it's contextual.
She says if it's asked, it's asked with kindness. Pretend I'm the son. Ask me with kindness. Let's do a little
role playing.
Role playing here.
Okay.
Ask me kindly to have my partner take
I'm on her team.
Go ahead, Shanna.
I could say, let's just say her name is Joan.
Joan.
I love Joan.
Yeah.
I love everything about her. I love that she's artsy. I love that, but I think, do you think maybe it would be okay if we asked her in this one circumstance, like, to just tone down for the sense of the photos, like maybe because it's a timely thing, or maybe, and then you just say it with kindness, and then
Okay,
say,
you did, and you know what my
Yeah.
response is? Because you said it with great kindness.
No,
I have to be honest. My response to you, Mom, is you are really an a-hole. That is
or it may be, of course, or it might be, you don't know. Look, I
Shanna,
come
that
from
was an
my
excellent
family.
attempt.
Thank you, Shanna. My background, is such that, let's say, I'm saying like if you go to a Muslim country or an Arab country, like it may be you have the best body in the world and you're used to wearing tank tops and showing your skin. But like if you're going to go to some family's house for an event or a big event, I think then you say, look, like, we don't show a lot of skin in this culture. I don't even understand why doing contextual discussions with your child
You're
about
comparing that to the girlfriend of the son having
the mother said it was a church and it was a wedding. And so the idea that idea that I'm saying, just walking around the street, it's just like the idea that you would not have a discussion about where you're going and what it might mean as what was her the only person who defends me, but she was great that you would just try to have a conversation about it seems odd. And I think Well, let me put you on the spot since I'm the a-hole.
Go ahead.
Like, have you never had that conversation with one of your kids? I mean, is that
what?
Just about like contextual decorum? Your kids are very. I know they're very funky. They're awesome. They're artistic.
Discussion I've had with my kids was about you. That's the only one that I've
really.
had. It was really.
They're so nice to me. Though
They are, but
I know, but they
don't know you that well.
Exactly. Now they can never speak to me.
Let's go to Brendan in Cambridge. Welcome to the show. Are you going to defend Juliet too?
Yeah.
Are you related to her or not?
This sounds like my brother.
No. This is purely for devil's advocacy.
Oh,
which
please.
Obviously, I would never.
Okay,
do
Brendan,
for you,
of course,
Jim,
is from
fine.
Cambridge. I love you.
You know. Okay, so let's think about it this way. I mean, families get to have a different kind of conversation internally about who gets to come, who doesn't get to come, and the kind of sensitive conversation that the mother might have with her, the rest of her family associated with this marriage. That maybe she's acting as a bit of a buffer, right? And maybe this is a very conservative family, and so it kind of goes back to what Juliet was saying about decorum, and you pick your times and your places for doing things. On the other hand, I will have to say about the piercings. Have you tried to remove one of those things?
No, are they impossible?
Maybe so. Maybe it's a bit over the top in terms of a request.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. I
Go
don't
ahead,
know.
Brenda. You're doing great,
I have now
sort of.
decided to expand this to a larger conversation to get out of this narrow hole I
Brenda,
built
are you
for
done?
myself.
Wait, are you done with your devil's
Yeah,
advocate? Because that was excellent.
Brendan, I'll be sending flowers.
I'm
Thank
done.
you.
I'm done.
That was beautiful, Brendan. Thank you.
Brendan, thank you. I'll find you
Anonymous
later.
texter really nailed it. The anonymous texter says, I wish Marjorie was here for this so she could take both sides of the issue. Marjorie would suggest they take out the left side piercings and the partner turns her head for the photos.
Creative.
That would have been great. It really would. And Caitlin in Weston, I hadn't thought of this, but this is really important. All the weeks and months we've been doing this, Caitlin asks, Jim, how does it feel not to be the a-hole for once?
I know. I mean,
it's the only time.
I'm here for you. I am
beautiful.
here for you. I will be. Anyway, all
We're
these
not
people
done.
telling me how horrible I am. I really
Not
want.
saying you're horrible.
I want to hear.
Yes, they are,
About
actually.
they are. But it's okay because I will believe that there's a world in which mothers don't have opinions about context. I will believe
Kendra
that.
in Rentham, you're next on Boston Public Radio. You may actually be last, even though there are many
Context is
people on part of
everything.
this. Go ahead, Kendra. Take it away.
Oh, fun. First time caller, long
We're
time
thrilled.
listener.
Thank
Oh my
you.
God, this got everyone calling. I love it. Hi.
Unfortunately, I wanted to say that I think the mom is the asshole.
A-hole.
Sorry, excuse me. A-hole.
Thank you. Yep.
Excuse me.
It's okay.
Because it seems like she has a deep personal thing about piercings.
She does.
And she's applying it to somebody else without examining it in herself. Like, why do you think that piercings are disrespectful?
On the face?
That's a very.
That's
why
a good
didn't
question.
I think of that,
on
Kendra?
the face. On the face, yeah. That's a
Keep
good
going,
question.
Kendra. You're doing great. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've evolved as a society to accept tattoos as a visible art form. Why are piercings disrespectful in society? It just doesn't make sense.
Kendra, you are beyond fabulous. That was an excellent call. Now, we're going to end this because I feel so bad for Juliet. She's getting crushed.
I think
Reverend Irene Monroe texted in.
I think there's a silent majority out there
No, there's
saying.
not.
I think there's a silent majority out there saying. I would totally whisper to my son about the face piercings. I'm just
Well, if
saying.
they're whispering, they're not silent. Here's Reverend Irene Monroe. You may have heard of her. She texted in saying, context is everything. She couldn't, meaning the partner, could not attend a black church or a black picnic.
Thank you, Reverend.
So, Reverend
I've got
Monroe,
the
you were
therapist
also
and the
barred
Reverend.
from this show.
I've got the therapist and the reverend.
Ask what's his name, what he thinks about this.
I know because we're
Jared,
friends.
who's
We're
the
friends,
a-hole?
and I know.
Who's the a-hole?
You want to ask me what I think of this?
Yeah, what do you
Oh,
what do
you're
you
on
want?
his side, her side?
I'm with Juliet.
Okay,
Juliet,
show's
why?
over.
Well, here's
Why?
the deal. So my dad's in his 80s. Whenever I go to my parents' house, I have to take my hat off. You can't wear your hat inside. This is just, there are a certain set of values that certain people have. And at some point you have to recognize it. So this family, there's another solution here. We've all seen the Apple commercial. Just take the pictures and then
zip her out.
Yeah, you can easily
zip her
do
out.
that. But I was thinking the same thing. You were talking about the Middle East. I went to Cairo. I had a friend who was wearing just no shawl or anything. So there was exposed skin. She was spoken to there. That's the custom of that country. And it's not necessarily disrespect, but you do have to some degree, honor our elders. That's how I looked at it.
Can I sum this up as politely as I can?
We're both
two losers, Jared and Juliet.
So there's this whole trend right now about the sheer clothing. We talked about the nudity ban on Canada. So what would you do if somebody showed up at a wedding with a sheer dress?
It depends who it is. So that's the context.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
It's your...
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Now, do you... that's it for you. I don't mean that's it for you in your opinion. It was a little too strong
because
for me.
I'm on Team Juliet on this
I
one.
know. Look, they shut you down.
What is,
they shut you
what
down
is on
for
that
it.
show? Your show there.
On the Culture Show today, we have artist Vincent Valdez. He addresses what he calls social amnesia in this country, not looking really or remembering the history of lynchings and attacks. And this is something that he represents in his art. And so he's got this amazing show out at Mass MoCA right now with this beautiful painting and portraiture. There is a great show on at the ART right now called Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York. I saw it last night. It is wonderful.
Love the title.
And it's a rom-com, essentially musical theater rom-com. There's so much energy, so much chemistry, and it's hilarious. We talked to its two creators. It's come from London, by the way, where it was a hit. And then Julia Swanson walks us through public art, hiding in plain sight.
And by the way, before you leave, speaking of Mass MoCA, do you know what station Marjorie and I and BPR are on starting Monday?
Oh,
NEPM 88.5
nice.
FM.
Too exciting.
Mass.
Jared,
we'll be
the
watching
wise.
Listen to the show. See you later.
The
Bye.
wise Jared, thank you so much for a little background. Oh, come on. Hey. Thank you, Jim, first of all.
You were fabulous.
Oh, my God, I'm exhausted. My nap. I need to go take a nap. But thanks for everyone for listening to another edition of BPR. And thanks for watching the YouTube stream. Keep up with us and Marjorie and Jim 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tune in tomorrow with two guest co-hosts, Andrea Cabral, who you heard today, and Shirley Long from the Boston Globe, will host from the BPL. It's Live Music Friday with Grammy-nominated Baroque violinist Christina Day Martinson, with filmmaker Nathaniel Hansen, who's making a documentary about her. Also joining two nonprofit leaders from Roca and 826 Boston, Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett. She's terrific. And Callie Crossley and Ron Mitchell for this week's Press Play Media Analysis segment. I want to thank, and we are all going to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aiden Conley, Nicole Garcia, and Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John LeClaw Parker. Patrick Lally runs our YouTube. Our executive producer, of course, is Jamie Bologna. And a shout out to Zoe's brother. Stay tuned to The Culture Show with Jared Bowen, starting immediately after us on 89.7 GBH. And a final, I'm Juliet Kayyem, and a much gratitude to Jim Browdy for letting me stand here next to him as a co-host.
You were fabulous. I'm
Thank
Jim
you.
Browdy. Juliet, thanks. We'll
Have
see
a
you
lovely
soon.
afternoon.
Go to the library
I'm off to
tomorrow.
my
Bye.
nap and my therapist.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. When a young, disillusioned doctor leaves the UK, she moves to South India and finds work at an understaffed and overworked hospital. Watch Good Karma Hospital tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at